This story begins in a gloomy dungeon. The cadaverous smell ingrained into this place so strongly that it was simply impossible to breathe this poisoned air. Hundreds of prisoners here were tortured every day, and the limit of their dreams was death. All these captives were imprisoned here by Bai Qinlin, a vile and shameless demon lord who took pleasure in their symphony of desperate screams. Bai Qinlin's favorite place was his terrifying throne, created from thousands of bones of former captives. Right now he sat in his rightful place and enjoyed his power. However, suddenly, the demon lord jumped up from his throne and looked around with wide eyes. He immediately covered his nose, noticing that there was a disgusting smell here, after which he continued to look around the area and was horrified to realize that he had just been reborn. Just a couple of minutes ago, Bai Fen lived his normal life in the body of a teenager and spent all his free time at home playing various games all alone. However, now he was in the body of the demon lord Bai Qinlin and, turning over different scenarios in his head, he realized that he was now in the body of the final boss from one game that he had completed a long time ago. Gaining confidence, Bai Fen approached the demonic mirror to look at his reflection and finally make sure that he was now the demon lord named Bai Qinlin, and also the main villain of this world. Bai Fen immediately remembered that this guy was a vicious character who controlled 3 beautiful female students. Also, Demon Lord Bai Qinlin was the final villain of all the final roots in the traditional Chinese-style game called Immortal Love. This madman deceived his master and destroyed his ancestors and even planned to throw his own teacher into the alchemical furnace so that he could turn him into a human elixir. And also, in order to keep the murder of his teacher a secret, he used forbidden spells to destroy his sect and left only his younger sister alive, thereby escaping justice. At the end of the game, Bai Qinlin stole the identity of the master of the Yuluo Temple of the Kanming sect to fight to the death with the strongest man of the righteous path, Mu Xinlan. Bai Qinlin spent 1,000 years cultivating himself and paid a heavy price to barely escape back to the Kanming sect. After examining his body, Bai Fen realized that he was in a moment in which Bai Qinlin had just barely escaped back to his old lair, and this was his final storyline. And the demon lord at the peak of his development was at the stage of immortality, but now he is in a pitiful state. Bai Fen also remembered with horror that at this moment, the demon lord in the original game was about to die because he was fatally poisoned by his most trusted third disciple. After these thoughts, someone knocked on the back of the door into his lair. It was his third student who asked in a gentle voice if the teacher was inside. Bai Fen did not answer, but the girl did not give up and said that it was time for her master to take his medicine. Bai Fen immediately rushed to his throne to look authentic when she came inside. Meanwhile, the girl stood at the door with a bottle of poison, and she remembered that the second student gave her this poison with the words that they are obliged to kill the demon lord because this is the only option and everything will end only when he dies. The third student understood the situation perfectly and was happily ready to finish off her teacher. With these thoughts, she opened the door with a smile. And with a slow step, she began to enter the throne room of the demon lord. Bai Fen looked at her in fear and thought that everything was happening just like in that original game. His third student was incited to take the opportunity to get medicine to use the poison pill that the male protagonist Xiao Chen gave her. The girl confidently walked towards the demon lord, holding a bottle of poison in her hands. Bai Fen thought that right now he was Bai Qinlin, the demon lord Bai Qinlin, and he definitely doesn't want to die to at least prevent this main character from recruiting his students. After these thoughts, notifications from the system popped up in front of the ruler, which congratulated him on the fact that he had just been bound by the legendary Great Love system and received a new task. He must use Great Love to emotionally influence the third student, Sen Singer, so that she would let go of her grudge against Master and became a completely devoted student. Bai Fen looked at this in surprise and did not understand where the Great Love system came from here, because the demon lord was evil who does evil without even blinking an eye. And even if this is an ordinary cheat for a reborn player, it still shouldn't look so ridiculous. However, Bai Fen immediately remembered that this was not necessary, because in the original game, the development of goodwill in the third student began only after his death. Bai Fen looked at the girl who was slowly approaching him, with the thoughts that this also means that, despite the fact that the story has reached this stage, she still cannot come to terms with the fact that she is letting her master go, and she does not care at all if she likes her. The demon lord is why this brat is his only chance. The demon lord waved his hand, raising a strong wind, thereby frightening the third student, who involuntarily screamed in surprise. After the wind calmed down, she looked warily into her master's eyes. The demon lord smiled and said that the girl should not be so careful, after which he asked her to come closer. The third student looked at him in surprise. Inside, she thought that now, the man who had always been above everyone else was acting as if there was actually a hint of warmth in his voice. With these thoughts, she even blushed a little. After that, she came a little closer and immediately fell to her knees with the words that she was greeting her master. She kept a bottle of poison next to her and thought that she needed to be very brave because there was nothing to be afraid of here. After all, the hero Xiao Chen sacrificed his life to ensure that Bai Qinlin's vitality would be greatly undermined. And after he takes the Void Soul Eater pill, his body will perish while his Tao dissipates and he will never be reborn again, leaving this world forever. The girl, without raising her eyes, took the poisonous bottle in her hands and said that the spiritual herb garden for which she is responsible has produced another batch of spiritual expenditures from 100 years ago, and currently she is presenting to her master the magic pill of 9 transformations that he asked for some time ago. The demon lord immediately stood up from his throne and asked, "Did she prepare so quickly?" After that he was silent for a while and asked the girl if she was sure that the pill was properly transformed. The girl raised her gaze and met the master face to face, saying that she would not dare to be careless, so she and the blood purification ash elder refined this pill day and night for 2 months. And the quality of this pill must be at least 7 class or higher. She also said with a smile that she was asking her master for favor. The demon lord walked towards this girl with a slight smile and a slow step, and said that it was very strange to hear from her that the pill was of the 7th grade, because the neck of the bottle glows with 9 colors. He also asked when they managed to improve the pill to the 9th grade. The girl immediately looked away and became nervous, after which she hesitated a couple of times, but still said that this was the effect of the additional ingredients that she added there. The demon lord came even closer and looked into her eyes and asked, "Was this intentional or accidental?" The girl's face immediately turned pale with fear. A moment later, she bowed her forehead to the ground and asked her master not to worry, because even though she added additional ingredients, the effect of it would still be at least 90% of the original pill, and if he noticed that the effect would be somehow different, then she will be ready to undergo severe punishment. Bai Fen looked at this girl with the thought that she was convincing him to take this pill with incredible zeal, so it is obvious that his good student really wants her teacher to die as soon as possible. However, the demon lord knew that the most disturbing state of a person is when he is weak, and foreplay should be enough for the so-called great love to penetrate deep into the soul. After that, he extended his palm and, using telepathy, pulled the pill. The third student looked up and asked her teacher if she was going to accept her right now. The girl immediately remembered how in distant childhood he was the only one who saw the potential in her and took her with him. After these memories, her heart began to beat like a rabbit's, and she said that if the master was satisfied, then she could send the pill back to the furnace to be processed again. However, the demon lord immediately turned to her, and, kneeling down on one knee, took her chin and asked, "Does she really hate him that much?" The girl sat on her knees with her mouth open, and the demon lord, after a short pause, asked, "Does she hate him so much that she's going to kill her own teacher?" The third student wanted to answer something, but due to a strong feeling of fear, she could only mumble something indistinctly. After that, Bai Qinlin stood up and ordered her to follow him. She looked up with tears in her eyes and asked, "Doesn't the teacher believe her?" Bai Qinlin walked slowly in the other direction, telling her not to ask any more questions. The girl stood up and, wiping her tears, obediently said that she understood everything. After that, they went down to the basement in complete silence. Meanwhile, Bai Fen, with a devilish smile, thought that as expected, this girl still does not have the courage or conviction to go against him, so he can change everything if he uses this as his advantage. After a couple of minutes, they finally made it down to the ground floor and stood in front of the blood storage doors. Bai Qinlin knew that this is where the demon lord must swallow the poisonous elixir, and this is also the place where the original protagonist made his last attack. The guy thought that in the game, everything seemed more peaceful, but in fact, it is cruel when he sees it in real life. The door consisted of hundreds of skeletons of Cyclops who lived on the Great Mountain. One day, the demon lord was deceived by the leader of the Cyclops clan and suffered such cruel torture that it was easier to die. The leader of the Cyclops clan wanted to take away the demon lord's innate demonic powers. However, fortunately, his demonic blood was activated at the last minute, and he was able to successfully escape. And after his demonic art was completed, the first thing he did was return to the Great Mountain and destroy absolutely all the Cyclops for the hospitality they showed him in the past. The third student, meanwhile, was worried and thought that not only the master's teacher wanted to take possession of his demonic power, but also the Cyclops clan was also plotting against him. or the pain who would experience such treatment would become ruthless and careless towards this world, so it's a bit of a stretch to understand his master. The girl sadly bowed her head down and thought that her teacher should not have been treated this way because it was very cruel. However, she immediately remembered the words of her elder sister. He is the real identity of this person. So if she does not kill him this time, then who knows how many people will die at his hands. The demon lord turned and looked at his third student and said that this was not the main thing. After that, he opened the door with the help of gestures and said that what he really wanted was for her to see that he was inside. As soon as they walked inside, the girl looked around in surprise and noticed the balls in the center of the room. She asked, "Is this the shadow demon pearl?" From stress, she even covered her mouth with her hand so as not to fall into hysterics. Because once upon a time, another disciple of the master said that the shadow demon pearls can track a person's every move and provide feedback at the owner's request. Also, the shadow demon pearl in their room was created by the teacher, and they have been monitoring them since they joined the teacher. The third student recalled the words of that girl that in fact, they are not students of Mr. A, they are just his weapons on a leash, so he treats them as ordinary things that he can touch whenever he pleases. The third disciple was thinking that the second elder sister told her to pretend that she did not know about the existence of these pearls. But now, she does not understand anything at all because she is not clear why the master decided to show her all this. While she was thinking about this, the demon lord looked at her and asked her to raise his head to look carefully. The girl immediately obediently agreed. She looked up and saw her past, how she lay next to her murdered parents and cried. And in front of her there were several men who said that they were infuriated by the vile crying of this child. After that, one of them swung his blade, shouting that he would finally shut her mouth forever. But a moment later, the demon lord appeared and immediately finished them off with one wave of his palm. After that, he slowly walked towards the girl. The little girl was no longer crying so much and was more surprised. She found the strength to ask who was standing in front of her. As soon as the man approached her, he stood up to his full height and introduced himself by his name. The little girl immediately fell to her knees in front of him and asked if he was a god, asking him to help her parents in that case. However, the man briefly answered that the gods neglect mortals and demons do not leave the living, so he cannot help the already dead. Leaning towards this girl, he wiped away her tears and said that now she would go with him. The girl looked into his eyes and asked with fear where they were going. And Bai Kinlan smiled and replied that they would go home. The girl couldn't stand seeing these memories live and wanted to open her mouth to ask for something. But the demon lord immediately interrupted her and said that her teacher has countless enemies, so his disciples will naturally also become missions for many people. And these shadow demon pearls are just one of his tactics to protect his disciples when they are in danger. The girl asked in shock, did teacher really mean that he always used the shadow demon pearl to protect them and not to monitor them? The demon lord turned around and said that the teacher had deliberately treated the girls unkindly all these years, and everyone in the world knew that his students had reasons to hate their teacher. So if he accidentally died, then his 3 students will still have a reason to side with the enemy and save themselves. The girl continued to listen to the teacher's words that it would be better if he could keep this a secret forever. However, he added with bitterness in his voice that, to his regret, the 3rd student had already decided to kill her teacher. With these words, tears flowed from the girl's eyes and her breathing became shallow, as if she did not have enough air. The demon lord, meanwhile, continued to speak, and said that all this was no longer important to him because as long as his student was safe, he didn't care about anything. After that, he raised his head to look at his 3rd student, but was surprised to find that she pounced on him and hugged him tightly. In tears, the girl began to apologize to her teacher and say that she was wrong. After a couple of seconds, with her face red from hysteria and tears in her eyes, she barely said that she should not have believed what others were saying and called herself stupid. She also said that she should have known from the very beginning that her teacher was the best person worldwide. After that, she again clung to the teacher and said that she really was wrong, so she asked for forgiveness from her teacher, because in fact, she loves him very, very much. The demon lord smiled evilly because the plan went like clockwork and hugged his student. While they were hugging over the demon lord's head, notifications appeared from the system congratulating the player on successfully completing the beginner's task. The demon lord immediately became happy because he did not expect that this would be considered using great love to influence the emotions of the 3rd disciple. After that, he looked at her again with the thought that he cannot afford much, because in order to survive, he must change the storyline of his opportunity, and the loyalty of the 3rd student is an indispensable factor for this. After that, he decided to act further and, with his hand on his shoulder, turned to his rebellious student with the words that he could not understand her behavior, So he wanted to find out who the scoundrel was who managed to persuade her to do this. The girl immediately fell to her knees and bowed, saying that she would now report everything to the teacher. She said that it was Xiao Chen's direct student, and it was because of him that discord was sown between the teacher and her. And she also added that he even used sweet words, cast a spell on the second elder sister, and created a rift in the relationship between the teacher and his students. The girl was on her knees and said that everything that happened today happened only because his student was deceived by the hero. So she asked her teacher to apply the most severe punishment to her, but not to drive her away. The demon lord smiled and replied that if so, the venerable sir would give her a second chance. After that, he bent down and took her by the shoulder, saying that if she did her master a favor, he would forgive her all her sins. The girl with loving eyes looked at her teacher and said that she would fulfill absolutely any of his requests. But inside she was glad that she would stay with him. The demon lord smiled and told her what she would have to do. Meanwhile, in the main hall of the Yuluo Sect Kangming Temple, where the demon lord resided, two people stood at the entrance. There was a second student, sir, and next to her was Xiao Chen, the main character of the original game. He asked the second sister why the youngest had not come out yet, and could it be that the demon could understand that something was wrong and expose this girl? The second disciple looked down and said that according to her agreement with the third sister, no matter whether she succeeds or not, she will immediately report it as soon as possible. And since there is still no news, this means that the plan is still being carried out. The main character began to get nervous and say that this wouldn't work. So he should go and check everything himself because there is absolutely no room for mistakes here. However, as soon as he headed inside, a blade immediately appeared after his neck, and the girl said that she was urging my lord not to be rash. The woman said that the outer part of the blood storage facility is filled with terrifying traps, and only the third sister is allowed to enter there. So if he wants to get inside by force, he will simply die leaving his life. The main character looked down angrily and said that in this case he could wait a little longer, after which he exhaled heavily and heard someone's voice. Looking down, he saw that it was the master's third student who was calmly going upstairs. He was glad that she had finally returned. Blushing a little, the main character immediately approached her and said that he was very glad that nothing happened to her because her older brother was very worried. However, instead of hugging, the girl simply stopped and looked at the main character. Her face was completely serene, and she felt absolutely no emotion towards this person. Seeing this picture, he lowered his hands and with a lump in his throat asked, "What happened?" Inside, he thought that the girl had begun to shun him, and this after he had helped them all these years, but she still did not allow her to hold her hand in such a situation. The second sister looked at the third and asked if everything was okay with her, and if she managed to carry out the plan. She also asked why she didn't tell her older sister about everything, as they agreed. The third sister looked at the second and said that the plan was successful. Hearing these words, the main character even dropped one tear, because he worked undercover in demon sects as soon as he turned 12 years old, and a total of 10 years had already passed. And now, when he finally destroyed the giant of the demonic path whose name was known throughout the continent, he will definitely become famous among righteous path cultivators in the future. The third student continued to say that this demon was arrogant, and she believed that he had already controlled her a long time ago and swallowed the Void Soul Eater pill. She also added that at this moment her emotions were fluctuating greatly, and she was afraid to reveal any of her weaknesses, therefore she did not dare to convey to him the necessary words. The main character immediately smiled and said that if this is so, then there is no need to rush, because the poisonous pill was bought by his master personally on the black market for a fair amount of gold. Therefore, they only need to wait 7 days until the effect of the poison reaches its peak, and even the strongest cannot avoid death and destruction of his soul. So the demon lord is definitely finished. Second sister said that it's not that they can't wait 7 days. She added that they all have great doubts and hope that the protagonist can clarify this. After all, this demon has done countless things, but it doesn't seem like he would have any. Then the claims are against her younger brother. So the girl wants to ask why he wanted to cooperate with them and even offered to use such a terrible poison pill. The third student immediately began to assent and ask why he was helping them. And she also reminded that it was he who showed enthusiasm for this plan. The main character immediately smiled and said that it was all just because he couldn't stand the way this demon bullied both of them for so long, so he wanted them to save yours from danger. After that, he asked, "Don't the two of them understand his concerns?" The third student immediately hid behind her older sister and asked, "Did he really do all this from the very beginning in order to get the two of them?" The guy immediately raised his hands to show that he was completely purging in his intentions and said that he didn't understand what could make them think that way. The second sister looked at both of them and asked them to forget about it, and also said that they need to finish today and meet again in 7 days, because it is already quite late and brother should not postpone the evening classes at the temple. The main character immediately folded his hands as a sign of respect and said that they would see each other later. Inside, he thought that these women are always fickle. After he left, the second sister looked at her youngest and asked, "Is she really sad?" The girl put her hand on her chest and asked her older sister if she had thought that maybe the teacher was not what they initially imagined him to be, and perhaps he was a little harsh with them, but would never harm them. The second sister smiled and tried to calm the girl down by saying that the evidence that Xiao Chen had given had already confirmed that the demon lord only saw them as material for his human puppets. And even if they could ignore all his vile deeds, they still would not be able to forgive, based on only on this fact. The third sister listened to all this in silence but did not answer anything. Meanwhile, the demon lord sat in her throne and thought that he would allow the third disciple to buy some time for him to catch his breath after a difficult battle. He also thought that the main character and his second disciple would definitely not be able to discover from the very beginning that he recruited a third student. After that, with a smile, he decided that he could finally rest a little and opened the system to check what rewards it gave him. A chest immediately appeared in front of him, and the demon lord said with a smile that it looked exactly like the treasure chest from the original game. After that, he eagerly opened it, and his face was illuminated by a magical light. A system immediately appeared in front of him, which said that the operation was successful, and the demon lord could choose one of 3 items in the treasure chest. The first of them was the adjustable divine rod, personally refined by the first patriarch, and it is very effective against female cultivators of the same realm where it was created. The second item was the Bed Sutra, the art of turning the wheel. It was a divine technique created by the first elder that could temporarily strengthen a certain part of the body. And finally, the third item was the Demon Lord Cultivation Level Return card. It could change space and time and allowed the player to temporarily return to any stage of cultivation. The Demon Lord looked at the Bed Sutra and the adjustable divine rod with the thoughts that these were just idiotic artifacts, and they were clearly not used for cultivating demons, but for the entertainment of ordinary people. Therefore, naturally, he chose the Demon Lord Cultivation Level Returner card. As soon as the Demon Lord picked it up, he immediately smiled, thinking that this was something that would allow him to return to another stage of cultivation, which meant that he could return to the time when the Demon Lord was at the peak of immortality. After that, the Demon Lord got up and headed towards the blood storage. He thought that the third student should follow his order, namely, meet the second and the main character, and lie that the poisoning plan was a success. After all, based on the original storyline, they will only enter the blood storage facility after 7 days to check his corpse. The traps will weaken as he slowly dies, and finally the main character who worked undercover in the demonic sect will personally deal the final blow. Therefore, the Demon Lord only has 7 days left to complete all the necessary preparations. After that, he stood on the fountain of blood and, spreading his arms, said that he was the Lord of Demons and was going to challenge the will of heaven and change his fate. After these words, an oblong object rose into the air from the fountain's cover. The Demon Lord pulled this item towards him, thinking that the original Demon Lord had previously taken out and hidden his cultivation core and 5 organs and replaced them with other items. After that, he opened the box, with the thought that even if he faces defeat in the decisive battle, as long as the remains of his soul are safe, he can restore an ideal body. And now that he knows what awaits him next, it is useless to put it off. And it would be better if he returned them early and regained his former strength as soon as possible. With these thoughts, he swallowed the cultivation core. The aura around him immediately changed, and he ordered his cultivation friend to return to his rightful place. After that, the Demon Lord noted with a smile that the cultivation core was the source of strength for this body, and his injuries immediately healed and his strength was restored to the foundation-laying stage. Bafin received a huge charge of euphoria, and out of emotion he even waved his hand and destroyed one of the walls, without straining one bit. The Demon Lord said that this was simply wonderful, and that this was the very power that the final boss should have. After that, he immediately heard the voice of the third student who shouted in her thin voice that she had just completed his mission and returned. She also added that she had brought something for her teacher. Demonov wondered what she could bring him because this part was not in the original game. After that, he returned to his throne and ordered the girl to go around. She quickly walked inside and immediately fell to her knees, greeting her master. After that, she said that the main character was delighted after hearing that the demon lord had swallowed a poison pill. And the second eldest, the sister, behaves as usual and still does not suspect anyone. The demon lord listened to all this and asked what else the main character said. The girl looked up and said that this guy said that the effect of the poison would reach its peak in 7 days, and even the golden immortal of the great all-encompassing heaven would have difficulty escaping this death. He also added that he asked the third sister to return here in 7 days to check the corpse of the Lord Demons, and then put all the blame on Mu Shinlin. When the girl said this, she was thinking that she had only now learned about the main character's ultimate plan, and she clearly did not expect that he would turn out to be so evil and shameless. The girl also added that she had something to show her master and picked up a real pill of 9 transformations that strengthens the soul. The demon lord immediately stood up from his throne in surprise because the real soul-strengthening 9 transformation pill only existed in the gallery of the original game and players had no opportunity to obtain it. So it was a real shock to him that the girl was able to find it. The demon lord looked at this pill through the bottle with the thought that with this thing, his confidence that he could change the ending again increased several times. Having come to his senses, he sat down on the throne again and said that he saw that the third student was really able to do it. And he also added that it was an excellent job. Hearing these words, the girl immediately blushed, and with a happy face added that if the teacher is happy, then she has one request. She slowly stood up and clenched her knees, asking in a languid voice if she could ask the teacher to reward her student this time. The demon lord looked at her in surprise and extended his hand and asked, "What reward does she want?" The girl came even closer and touched the palm of the demon lord. After that, with a lustful face, she put his palm on her cheek and raised her knee. Placing it between the legs of the demon lord, she asked him to forgive her student for disobedience and added that she really loves when the teacher touches her. The demon lord ran his hand over her face, thinking that this girl had such delicate skin that he felt as if his hand would sink if he pressed a little harder. However, after that, he immediately took his hand back and said that she was a naughty student, and he also asked who allowed her to be so frank with her teacher. The girl looked at her master in surprise, and he stroked her head, saying that touching her head would be enough as a reward for bringing this pill. The third student inside was of course upset that she didn't have intimacy with the master, but she was also glad that he was just patting her on the head, so she giggled, blushing, and apologized. She put her hands on the master's hand and said that she was too presumptuous. After that, she blushed even more, and her breath became so hot that you could get burned. She lowered the demon lord's hand a little lower and said that there was one more place where his student would like to receive a reward. The demon lord immediately became embarrassed and pulled away a little, and in front of his face a notification appeared that the system congratulated the player for successfully spreading great love, and also added that the system store was now unlocked. Meanwhile, in the bedroom of the Yingui Temple, Xiaoqian knelt and said that he greeted his teacher. The teacher of the Yingui Temple, Kangming Sect, named Hua Yuran, came out of her bedroom and said that she heard that the demon lord not only lost all his abilities but was also poisoned, and now his life hangs by a thread. She looked down at her student down and asked, "Is this true?" The main character immediately raised his head and said that this is true, because he has a good relationship with the third disciple of the demon lord, and she herself told them about it. He also added that if his teacher goes to the blood store to kill the demon lord right now, then the position of the next section leader will definitely go to the teacher. However, as soon as he said this, the woman immediately waved her hand and slapped him in the face. The main character looked at his teacher in surprise and asked why she did this. The woman answered in a menacing tone that in the past, the demon lord was a student of alchemist Xie Yaoshi, and his skills in alchemy even surpassed his teacher. So she wants to know what kind of poison pill could make him so helpless. The main character wanted to say something but could not find the words, and immediately bowed his head, saying that it seems that the information about the poisoning of the demon lord is a lie. He immediately stood up and folded his hands as a sign of respect, saying that the student was leaving his teacher. As soon as the girl was left alone with herself, her smile immediately spread across her face. She began to whisper that her older brother was a real fool. The woman with the same smile thought that on that day, he saved her life in vain. There was a question in her mind. Did he do this to make her hate him and take revenge on him in the future? With glowing red eyes, the girl quietly whispered in a passionate voice that he had achieved this and that soon his life would be cut short by her personally. In the Temple of Blood, meanwhile, the third student embarrassedly thanked her master for the reward and said that it was time for her to leave. As soon as she left, the demon lord, blushing a little, looked at his hand, thinking that it was quite pleasant. After that, He cleared his throat and asked his system to open a new store, which is now available to him. The system immediately congratulated him on the fact that he now has access to the store, and added that here the owner can exchange points for treasure chests, and as the total number of points spent increases, more treasure chests will open, after which a store opened in front of him, where it was written that he now had 1,000, and below was the entire assortment of the store. The Demon Lord looked at the store in surprise and noticed that there was only a treasure chest here. He also noticed that the golden treasure chest that he had received for free earlier was worth as much as 5,000 here, but he only had 1,000. After this, the system displayed a notification that since the player is using the store for the first time, the player will be given a chance to try first before buying. This attempt will cost 1,000 taler. The gentleman immediately said that he was familiar with this marketing strategy, but added that he had no choice, so he accepts this condition. Immediately after this, the system congratulated its owner for opening another golden chest and provided him with a reward, giving him the opportunity to choose one of 3 items. There was a memory card that could revive memories of storylines that the player had forgotten. There was also a knife that heartlessly destroys a desire that is capable of interrupting the possibility of reproduction with one movement, saving the owner from annoying lust. And the most interesting thing, a life restart pill. It will be tied to the soul and is intended exclusively for the use of players. But also in the description it was written that the system is not sure that the pill is real and can really restart life. The Demon Lord got angry and said that the system spent his money on a scam because he is already familiar with the plot and the knife that she offers him is an ordinary castrating nose. He also angrily added that the life restart pill is still disposable and also useless. He continued to shout and ask, "Is it really a marketing ploy? Get now, pay later?" That is not aimed at luring players to spend money, because in the end the system deceived him with the help of this garbage. He continued to be indignant and ask, "Doesn't the system understand how to do business?" While he continued to be angry and argue with this system, suddenly the eyes of a shadow demon appeared in front of him. The Demon Lord immediately looked at them and asked them who was there. After this, the shadow demon pearls formed into a strange device, and out of it appeared the eldest disciple of the Demon Lord. As soon as she emerged from the shadow demon portal, she immediately got down on one knee and greeted her master. The Demon Lord looked at her with the thoughts that she looked millions of times more beautiful than the illustrations in the game, and her figure, her cold exterior and inner warmth completely coincided with his taste in women. The girl noticed that the young master was still silent and raised her gaze to look at him. However, she saw an absolutely calm Demon Lord, who was still silent and did not greet his eldest student. The eldest disciple looked at her master with the thoughts that this demon had never been in such a trance and had never behaved like this, and perhaps the rumors that were spreading outside this temple were true. She immediately wondered if she should send a message to the second younger sister and talk about it. While she was thinking about this, she involuntarily smiled, glad that the teacher did not have long to live. However, as soon as a smile appeared on her face, the Demon Lord immediately asked in a calm voice why she was laughing. Does the teacher really look funny to her? The girl was immediately filled with fear, and she realized that her master had not changed a bit. It still had its terrifying aura and familiar feeling of pressure, and one look from him can destroy all pride and self-respect. The girl felt danger with every cell of her body, so she immediately instinctively looked away. Cold sweat flowed down her body, and she thought that she should no longer anger her master. She ran her hand over her stomach with the thought that she no longer wanted to activate the evil rune engraved on her stomach, because, again, being subjected to this heartbreaking punishment is akin to death. The Demon Lord briefly asked where his student was now. The woman replied that by the will of the teacher, she is now at the foot of Heishui Mountain, where the suppression of demons is located. She said that now this place has been cleansed, and there are no more disciples of the righteous path patrolling the mountain and preventing her from climbing this mountain. The Demon Lord smiled and said that this is great news and the girl can continue her mission. He also added that she must attack the Demon Suppression Tower and get the secret item that her teacher needs. The girl immediately replied that she would carry out any of his orders, but inside, she was still thinking that he was still ruthless and unprincipled. She also began to reproach herself for the fact that it occurred to her to cross paths with him right now. So she immediately stood up and folded her hands as a sign of respect, saying that the student was deviating. The Demon Lord watched her leave and ordered her to stop. The girl looked at him in fear and asked, "Does the teacher have any other instructions?" The Demon Lord rose from his throne and began to slowly approach her, asking if his student knew what day it was. The older student folded her hands again as a sign of respect and bowed her head. A apologizing for being stupid, she immediately asked to be forgiven. The demon lord, meanwhile, walked up to her image and said at that time, flying very quietly, "And tonight she will finally enter the golden age of youth." The older student looked at him in surprise and clearly did not understand what he was talking about. The demon lord, meanwhile, looked up and said that 14 years flew by unnoticed, and even if no one in this world remembers this, the teacher will definitely never forget this date. The day she followed him into the mountains. The older student immediately remembered her first meeting with this man, how he gave her his clothes so that she would not freeze and tried to warm her hands with his breath. The demon lord took a short pause and congratulated his baby on her birthday. When the girl heard this, she was very surprised at first, and after that her face turned a little red. Tears began to appear in her eyes, so she immediately turned away and said that it was time for her to complete the task. After that, she disappeared, and the system congratulated its owner on the successful spread of great love. She also added that for this task, he receives 2,000 points, and his current condition is now estimated at 3,000. The demon lord, meanwhile, was thinking that this time he was not deliberately trying to win the favor of the student, because it was solely because he liked the appearance of her character. And when he got into the game, he even remembered the date of her birthday. Now that all three of his students are calm, there shouldn't be any problems after 7 days. After standing bird. No, for a while, he took out a pill and decided to use it right now, to reach the virtuoso stage in one go, because it should be as easy as waving his hand. The demon lord began to absorb the power from this pill, with the thought that after this show to destroy the main character would finally begin. The next day, the usual daily training was taking place in the demon lord's palace. There was also the main character of this story, who today moved somehow uncertainly. His friend asked what happened. Is something eating the hero from the inside? Xiaochen immediately turned around and said that everything was fine, but he still thanked his younger brother for his concern, and he also asked his friend if he gave the phoenix hairpin to his younger sister. The main character asked with a smile, "Did the girl like this gift and did she accept it?" The temple student hesitated a little and said that there was one discrepancy here. The main character immediately blushed and asked, did his younger sister give him a gift in return? And the temple student apologized and said that as soon as he gave this gift, the girl immediately broke it in half. After this news, the protagonist even lost his blade from his hands due to shock. He took hold of his head with the thought that after the first plan to kill this demon was successful, the younger sister must have missed him very much, but he does not understand why she rejected his gift. And the temple student said that she not only broke his gift but also added something. The main character looked at his friend with fear and asked what the younger sister told him. The temple disciple said that the younger sister said that she hopes that senior brother Xiao will never disturb her again, because she is afraid that her lover will misunderstand it. Hearing this, the main character could not cope with his feelings and fell unconscious into the bushes. The student immediately looked at him and asked if everything was okay. The main character regained consciousness after a couple of seconds and asked who dared to steal his beloved right in front of his nose. He also added that when he finds out who did it, this guy will not get off so easily. The demon lord, meanwhile, realized with a smile that he had just reached the virtuoso stage again. And what's more, he had refined the high-quality core that every demonic cultivator dreams of, and it was now a 9-color demon core. This core not only has infinite magical power, but it is something that the original demon lord was never able to refine. And although now, he is still far from the peak of the immortality stage, he is no longer equal to those who are in the virtuoso stage. The youngest student entered the throne room and congratulated her teacher. She said that it was a great honor for her to share the happiness of the ruler. The demon lord looked at her and said that her contribution would naturally not be forgotten, and from this day on she would no longer need to stand on ceremony and use honorifics. The girl was happy with this news and she thanked her teacher. She also said that this morning the main character wanted to give her a gift to win her favor. And the girl with a smile said that she broke the gift in half, and she also added that this guy is so blind and thinks that he can continue to deceive her. The girl with a smile, crazy with love, said that she was very sorry that the thing was broken, not one of the parts of his body, because in that case she felt even better. The demon lord listened to all this and looked at her feet. After that, he ordered her to come closer to the teacher. The girl obediently approached. The demon lord rose from his throne. He looked his youngest student in the eyes and ordered her to take off her shoes. The younger student looked at him in surprise. The demon lord said that he was not going to repeat it twice, and she should immediately carry out all orders. The junior disciple was embarrassed and said that the feet of a demonic female cultivator are an object of darkness and they can easily pollute the earth with their demonic energy. and even the holy sect will not easily allow others to see their foot. The demon lord said that he did not intend to wait any longer, and the girl with an embarrassed face took off her shoes and stockings, exposing her feet. After that, she stood on the ground, and the demon lord saw something strange on her leg. He turned around and said that this is the poisonous miasma of the heavenly demon flower from the demon farm. He also added that his student was poisoned for the teacher, and she did not tell him about it, and he was interested in knowing the reason for this behavior. The younger student stammered and said that it was just a minor problem and not worthy of the teacher's concern. The girl with loving eyes looked at the teacher and said that as long as she can perfect a pill that will satisfy her master, she will not hesitate, even if the poison parasites the heart and causes ulcers throughout the body, because her life is dedicated and nothing else is important to her. The demon lord listened to all this with the thoughts that this was somehow too voluptuous, and this should just be an ordinary romantic game, and it was as if she was trying to kill him with her feelings. The demon lord looked at his disciple and ordered her to sit on his throne. The girl looked at the gentleman in fear and said that this was his throne and she would not dare sit on it. However, the demon lord immediately took her by the shoulders and seated her in his throne. After that, he looked into her eyes and said that he would help remove the poison from her body. The younger student held her stockings in her hands and asked, "Is the master going to use his poison-immune blood to cleanse her body of the poison of the demonic flower?" However, as soon as she finished saying this, she immediately closed her eyes in embarrassment and bowed her head, saying that she shouldn't do such a thing. After all, the teacher is a supreme demon lord, and he has no need to care about her pitiful body. However, the demon lord did not pay attention to her words, and took her foot, taking a closer look at her in his hands. The girl, meanwhile, was incredibly embarrassed, and tears even appeared in her eyes. She thought that such a highly respected teacher as her really wanted to get closer to her, and this was not a dream. The girl thought that the demon lord was definitely not lying to her, and really cared. After that, the demon lord opened his mouth and bit the skin on the girl's leg, and then began to suck out the poison. While he did this, the younger student squirmed and screamed in pleasure. Half a minute later, the demon lord rose to his full height and said that the job was done, and he had sucked all the poison out of her body, and now she was completely fine. The girl, meanwhile, lay in complete shock from what had just happened, but she was also happy because it was very pleasant. The demon lord looked at her body and asked in a serious voice, "How long is she going to sit on his throne?" The girl blushed again and immediately jumped up, saying that she was already leaving, and also apologized for her stupidity. After this, the demon lord was left alone, and the system notified the player with the successful spread of great love, and she also added that his fortune was now equal to 5,000. The demon lord sat on the throne, saying that he wanted to test his skills and techniques. The system immediately opened an alert in front of his face, which stated that he possessed the supreme breath condensation technique, as well as the heavenly demonic transformation technique, which was currently unavailable, as well as the 9-peak sky burning technique and the blood sea elegy technique, all of which were currently unavailable. The demon lord looked at this with thoughts that the masterful stage of cultivation was still unable to control this body's innate demonic techniques and heaven-defying sacred techniques, the skill that he could rely on the most right now. This poisoning technique has been upgraded to level 96. The demon lord began to get up from his throne with the thought that according to the original game, the main character will enter the blood vault tomorrow to try to behead the demon. But it just so happens that he has the perfect poisonous insect to send him away. After that, he extended his palm and summoned some kind of demonic insect. The demon lord smiled with the thought that the main character should appreciate this wonderful gift. After that, he went down to the blood storage facility on the 3rd floor of the basement. There were his prisoners, who as soon as they saw the demon lord immediately began shouting all sorts of nasty things to him and begging him to die. The demon lord walked slowly to one of the cells. There sat a man dressed completely in white clothes. As soon as the demon lord approached, the man looked up and asked what the demon needed. The demon lord smiled, because from one look at this guy you can understand that he has the face of the protagonist. And in the game, the demon accidentally captured this guy so that he could become a test subject, and only after the final boss dies and starts a side mission will the identity of this man be revealed. The demon looked at his captive and said that he was honored to meet Xiaoyi, the last direct disciple of Yu Suzi's school. He also added that he knew that this guy was at the virtuoso stage and his divine sword technique was impressive, and he could truly be called a genius of the younger generation of the righteous path. Hearing these words, the prisoner got angry and asked the demon how he knew who was in front of him now. The demon lord smiled and leaned closer to the cage with the words that soon his younger brother would come for his elder, and it so happened that the two of them were very close so they could take care of each other. The prisoner immediately flew into a rage and said that if the demon lord dared to lay even a finger on his brother, he would never stop haunting him even if he became a vengeful ghost. The demon king looked at this man with the thought that there was already a demonic light burning in Xiao Yi's eyes, because of course he inadvertently mastered some demonic cultivation techniques with the help of the soul-binding banner. And it is not surprising that in the original side mission, he was able to help the main character unlock the heart demon and embark on the double path of cultivation of Taoist and demon. The demon lord changed his face and smiled menacingly, and said that he hates when he is threatened. But he will still give this guy one more chance and play a game with him. The man asked in surprise, "What game is the demon going to play?" The demon lord laughed and spread his arms, saying that if this guy can defeat him, then he will let him go and then be able to reunite with his younger brother. But if he loses, he will be completely purified by the soul-binding omen. The prisoner immediately began to shout that if he had been a real opponent for the demon lord, he would not have fallen to his current state. Immediately after these words, the demon lord formed a supreme breath condensation technique seal in his hands and freed himself. The demon lord looked at the prisoner and said that during the last battle, one of the people destroyed his cultivation, so the demon lord only recently returned to the path of self-improvement, and right now, they are both at about the same level. After all, they both have virtuosos, by the way. After this, the demon lord smiled and said that this was the last chance for Xiao Yi. Xiao Yi immediately took a fighting stance and said that he would fight the demon one-on-one and would fight until his death. After that, the demon lord said that this was great and took out a key to open his cage, and meanwhile, a poisonous insect was flying near the neck of this cultivator. A couple of minutes later, when the prisoner had already left his captivity, he said that he really did not expect that the demon lord would return his body and his blade to him. He also laughed and said that he was even more surprised that the demon's cultivation level had fallen to the virtuoso stage. So we can say for sure that the heavens really see everything and punish everyone who takes the wrong path. The demon lord briefly replied that this was reclamation and not a fall. The prisoner untwisted his blade and said that all this no longer matters because he is not interested in knowing the secrets of someone who will probably die soon. The demon lord smiled and asked why this guy was so confident in his victory. Xiao Yi pointed his blade towards the demon lord and said that last time he lost and was captured only because his cultivation level was much lower than that of the demon. But now that they are both at the same level, taking his life will be as easy as killing a chicken or kill the dog. The demon lord said that they could begin, and the man immediately used his powers to summon the divine sword technique. After that, he attacked the demon lord with a furious cry. The demon lord, meanwhile, calmly said that, as expected from the protagonist's ball-wielding technique, which can defeat everyone in the initial stages, this guy is very strong, and moreover, his technique is much stronger when it is used by Xiao Yi. They are the main character. The demon lord gathered his strength into a fist and said that if this guy had not died in the plot, it would have been difficult to take the place of the protagonist. Therefore, the demon lord uses it after this battle to test the flawlessness of their new body. When the blades of the divine sword were already almost near the demon lord, he swung his hand and attacked them back at full speed. In an instant, he gripped the edge of the most important sword in this technique with his 2 fingers, and passing demonic energy through it, destroyed it and all the other blades of this technique. Xiao Yi immediately fell to the ground with the words that this could not happen. He asked the demon lord with fear, "How could he do this?" The demon lord said with a smile that even among cultivators of the same level, there is a difference, and that is why the man lost. Xiao Yi immediately broke down and shouted that he could not accept this, and the demon lord accidentally managed to hit the weakest point of this technique, because if he had missed, he would have already been dead. The demon lord smiled devilishly and said that nothing would change, and then he asked, "Does the man still not feel that something has been added to his body?" Xiao Yi looked at his opponent in surprise and then looked down and saw that his body was being eaten by poisonous insects. He started screaming in pain and saying that these were the most powerful of the 9 evil bone-chewing insects, and the demon lord was an incredible scoundrel because the fight was unfair. The demon lord slowly walked up to Xiao Yi's body and said that if there had really been any danger in his movements just now, those little creatures would have immediately eaten him alive. And in other words, he did not have a single chance of victory, the demon lord said, in front of the dying Xiao Yi, who was being devoured by insects. The demon lord laughed and asked, "Is it possible that having the same level of cultivation, he imagined that he was equal in this battle?" The soul of this guy rose to the artifact that sucked it in. And the demon lord spread out his arms and said that telling him the truth in the last minutes of his life was a form of spreading great love, and the system should definitely reward him for this. However, nothing happened. The demon lord immediately began to get angry and ask why the system does not give him points. Is it because he was supposed to die in this story anyway? Or is it because he is a man? The demon lord realized that he would not get an answer and decided to leave with the thought that familiarity with the technique of insect poisoning was a small advantage anyway, so he did not have to worry about tomorrow. The demon lord was thinking about whether the main character would be brave enough to kill the demon lord if told about his brother's current condition. At this time, Xiaochen dreamed that he was protecting the master's 3 students and said that they were not to blame for anything, but his brothers didn't even listen to him. He tried to persuade his teacher to say something, but she was silent. The nightmare was so strong that he immediately woke up screaming that he wanted the teacher to save him. After that, he looked back in surprise and realized that everything was in order, and also that he was talking in his sleep, and fortunately, he did not wake up his younger brother. The main character sat on the bed and looked at the moon, with the thought that today is already the 6th day, and the poison absorbing the soul in the body of the demon lord should have already spread to the limit. After that, he got dressed and taking his blade headed out into the street with the thought that his younger sister has been acting very strange lately, and perhaps there is some kind of flaw in the plan, and if he doesn't personally go and check how the Lord is feeling there, demons, he will not be able to get rid of the anxiety in his heart. When he was leaving, his roommate suddenly woke up and asked where the main character was going, because it was too early. The main character immediately replied that he was going to the lake because he wanted to eat fish. A thunderstorm began outside. The younger student ran to her teacher's throne room and stopped in front of the doors. The girl was completely wet and was wearing only a shirt. She hesitantly asked if she could go inside. The demon lord looked at the door in surprise and did not understand when she managed to appear here because she was supposed to be here only tomorrow afternoon, while the main character should come here in the morning. And if she is here now, then something clearly went wrong. The demon lord sat down on his throne and ordered her to enter. When the girl entered, the demon lord looked at her, was silent for a couple of seconds, and then asked why she came to visit the Venerable One. The girl, completely wet in the rain, said that she was very worried about her master, so she came to take a look. The demon lord asked what she meant. Does she really think that this guy could carry out his plot? Or is she trying to say that the demon lord was seriously injured and is now crippled? Thunder struck on the street, and the girl immediately replied that she would not dare. When she said this, she stuttered very much. The demon lord heard thunder and realized what was happening, and it was all because of the thunderstorm. After all, when her parents were killed that night after he saved her, there was the same fierce storm as today. And this was the biggest trauma in this girl's heart. And in the original game, whether this girl could be won over depended on how perfectly she could manage the plot in rainy days. The girl looked into the eyes of her master and gained the courage to say what she wanted. Having finally gained confidence with loving eyes and in a seductive pose, the girl said that she wanted to sleep with the teacher. The demon lord immediately became embarrassed and thought that, even though she looks incredibly mesmerizing now, the main event is the murder of the main character, which should derail this plot and change the fate of the main villain, so there should be no potential problems. The demon lord looked at her angrily and asked if this was all she wanted, after which he added that it was simply unceremonious. However, the girl immediately rushed into his arms and pressed him with all her might. All her clothes and her whole body were completely wet from the rain, and the girl, clinging to the master, said that she was really afraid of a thunderstorm and asked the teacher to let her in only for one night. The girl climbed onto the throne of the demon lord and raised her legs, clinging as tightly as possible to her master, and meanwhile he asked, "What does the fear of thunder have to do with her teacher?" The girl did not answer anything, and only squeezed his clothes in her hand, bowing her head. The demon lord shouted that everyone except him was forbidden to stay in the vault, and if he makes an exception and accepts her today, then where will his pride go as the lord of this temple? However, after only 10 minutes, they were in the blood storage in the royal residence in the underground palace, and lay together. The demon lord looked at the ceiling and did not understand how the girl was able to persuade him. And in the meantime, the system said that it congratulated the player for the successful spread of great love and gives him points. The man thought that his character was about to disappear, and no one could understand him. But he was simply too caring and tactful. After that, he turned his gaze to the younger student who was lying next to him. The girl pretended to be asleep and thought that her teacher obviously only wants immortality. And she cannot compare with this because today, he actually forgave her rudeness and even accepted her fear by allowing her to sleep with him. The girl thought that she was now the happiest in the world and did not even understand whether she deserved to be so happy. However, while she was thinking about this on the street, strong thunder began, so strong that it could be heard even in the underground palace. And the girl, frightened, immediately turned around and hugged the teacher as tightly as possible, clinging to him. The demon lord immediately loudly asked who gave her permission to touch the venerable one, and doesn't she understand that she's running into trouble? The girl sheepishly replied that it was all because of the thunder, and also added that her hands and feet were very cold. So she was just trying to warm them up, and in no case would she move a step forward. Words began to swirl in the demon lord's head about moving one step forward. He immediately stood up and sat down with the thought that the time when the younger student came to find him had been postponed. And this could mean that the main character could also come earlier to kill him. And if he was heading towards the temple, then now was not the time to sleep. The man took the girl by the shoulders and ordered her to get up. She asked him in surprise what was the matter. The demon lord looked her straight in the eyes and said that he had a very important mission for this girl, and from now on, she must follow his every word. Meanwhile, the main character was already at the foot of the mountain. He was determined and mentally thought that the demon lord might be preparing for his death. Friends, I spend a lot of time and effort retelling a single manhwa. It takes several days, and my videos don't always pay off. If you like what I do and want to support me or see more of this manhwa, please use the super thank you feature. It really helps. And a huge thank you to everyone who watches the video to the end. I really appreciate it. The next morning, the second disciple of the demon lord went up the mountain to play her musical instrument peacefully. Her calmness was interrupted by the so-called Ye Hongyi, who also climbed the mountain with the question, "Doesn't the second disciple want to personally see the end of this demon?" The second student looked at her friend and called her her closest sister. She also added that the girl must understand everything, that before she truly loses her teacher, she will not tolerate any slander against him from others. The blue-haired girl came closer to the second student and apologized, saying that she was wrong, after which she sat down on the grass and asked if the second student was going to see her teacher off in person, to which the girl replied that there was no need. Inside, she thought that the teacher was her eternal nightmare and the apple of her eye. Meanwhile, the main character of this story continued to climb the mountain on his flying ball, with the thought that the jade talisman for transportation turned out to be really useful, and not a single student guarding the temple gate asked him a single question. Having finally reached the door to the throne room, the main character exhaled with relief, with the thought that everything would work out if it was the will of heaven. He stopped looking at this gate with the thought that 10 years of work undercover, suffering and hardship were for the sake of this very day, and now he has a secret weapon given by the teacher. Therefore, he should not be afraid of anything. While he was thinking about this, he heard the voice of the third disciple of the demon lord who called her older brother. When he noticed her, he was immediately happy and looked at the girl with a smile, asking what she was doing here. However, he immediately wiped the smile from his face with mice, that she had been cold to him for a very long time, so he couldn't immediately become nice. But he didn't succeed, and a second later he smiled again with a stupid face. After that, he came closer to her and said that he was very glad that his sister finally paid attention to him, because her older brother was very worried about her. The third student, with a feigned smile, said that her brother was very mistaken, because she had been watching the demon's movements lately, and if the demon noticed that her brother had come to look for Iota, it would be a disaster. The main character with a happy face said that if the girl was worried about him all this time, then he should have known about it. After that, he immediately became serious and stated that 7 days have already passed, so they don't have to worry about anything anymore. And they can go there together right now and kill the demon to glorify their names forever in history. The girl immediately closed her eyes and said that she was very afraid. She also added that this demon is her internal trauma, and it will be very difficult for her to get rid of it in such a short time. The main character listened to this and grabbed the hilt of his blade, saying that this was not a problem. After that, he waved his blade and added that today he would personally behead this demon and dispel the fog in her heart. The girl smiled shyly and said that she would rely on her older brother for everything. The main character immediately became embarrassed, thinking that she was very nice and that she must have come here so early to cheer him up before the important fight. After that, they climbed the steps and opened the gate to the temple. The third disciple of the demon lord called him closer and said that she needed to go down the steps. The guy walked down and was clearly surprised. He also asked if they were going in the right direction. The girl did not answer anything, and he thought that the secret weapon that the teacher gave him was suppressed by an unknown force, and if this force continues to grow, the weapon will not be able to release even 10% of its power. After this realization, he turned to the third disciple of the demon lord and said that they could not go down any further, so they must return to the last fork in the road and take a different path. The third student immediately said that she had served this demon for many years, so there can be no mistake here, and this is the only passage to the third basement level where the demon is located. After that, the girl came a little closer and asked, "Doesn't her older brother trust her?" The man immediately tried to calm this girl down and said that of course he completely trusted her, after which he asked her not to worry and suggested that she continue to go down. After another couple of minutes, they found themselves in some strange hall. As soon as they went a little deeper, the doors immediately closed. After that, as if out of nowhere, the demon lord appeared and greeted the warlike nephew. He also added that this was their first meeting with each other. Therefore, he was very pleased to meet you. The main character looked at the demon lord in surprise and asked, "Is he still alive?" The third student, meanwhile, asked why he looked like he was not poisoned at all. She began to think and say that perhaps he not only restored his abilities, but was even able to get rid of the poison. The main character asked his girlfriend not to worry and to look at his hand. He said that these purple veins are a symptom of the Ace Eater's poison, and this means that the demon lord is already terminally ill and there is no way to save him. After that, he remembered his teacher with the thoughts that the girl was too worried, and this demon was clearly bluffing. Meanwhile, the demon lord began to whisper something under his breath, and the third student said that he was most likely casting a spell to activate the formation matrix, and he definitely wanted to use the blood storage restrictions for his final battle. Hearing this, the main character immediately took a fighting stance and declared that he would not allow this demon to do what he wanted. After that, he rushed into battle with all his might and struck the body of the demon lord. His eyes glowed with a blue glow, and he was glad that he was finally able to do this. He also ordered the demon lord to just die and be calm, because the main character would take care of his students instead of him. However, when the main character looked up, he saw that it was not the demon lord standing in front of him, and the identity change had disappeared. After a couple of seconds, the main character saw his older brother. He couldn't believe his eyes, and that he had just killed his older brother. The main character of this story stood unable to believe what he had just done. He immediately ran to his brother and took him in his arms, asking, "What is happening here, and why is he here, and why did he take the form of a demon?" The protagonist's dying older brother said that it was all a demon's trick. The man wanted to continue talking but was immediately killed. The demon lord began to laugh and say that the first thing this guy did after reuniting with his family was to immediately kill her, and they are brothers who truly love each other. The demon lord laughed a lot and said that the venerable one could not bear his suffering look, so he gave him a quick death, and the main character should thank him. The main character rose to his feet and began shouting that the demon lord was shameless and would not allow them to even exchange a few phrases. The third student began to slowly approach her master and explained to the main character that he had been fooled, and he still could not understand it. After that, she stood next to the demon lord and said that this was all part of her master's amazing plan. The guy could not believe that the girl called this man her master. The demon lord pulled the girl closer to him and ran his hand over her face, saying that the venerable disciple was naturally his servant, and this should not be surprising. After that, he added that the hero should have known about these rules of the demonic path. The main character's legs gave way, and he said that all these years he had been seeking the favor of the third disciple of the demon lord, and only recently he was able to touch her hand, and she did just that. He continued to say that he could not understand why she was now seducing this demon and letting him touch her body. After that, he fell to his knees and began screaming to ask why she lied to him, and why did she betray her sisters and brother. The third student looked at him in surprise and asked what betrayal we were talking about, because from the very beginning the teacher really cared about her. So she is ready to serve him until her last breath and give him everything she has. After that, she slowly walked up to the main character and said that he always incited her sisters to kill the teacher. So she hates him so much that she wants to tear out his soul and tear off his skin, and also wants him to wish for death but not be able to die. The main character listened to all this with the thought that the girl would never say such a thing. After that, he found strength within himself and stood up, with the thought that the demon most likely used the human puppet technique on her to control her behavior. His eyes lit up with blue fire, and he shouted to the whole temple that if he kills the demon lord, who can save this girl? After that, he summoned his spiritual copies and attacked the demon lord, shouting that even if he was not poisoned, the demon lord was still too much because his cultivation was destroyed. The third student fearfully asked her teacher to be more careful. Meanwhile, the demon lord used his demonic eyes to find out which of them is real, because the distribution of power and the rhythm of the ball's movement are all clearly visible in his eyes. Therefore, at the very last moment, it was not difficult for him to grab the tip of this blade with 2 fingers. The main character immediately jumped away from the Demon Lord and took out an artifact called the 12th grade Demon Suppressing Golden Lotus. The demon looked at this and was glad that the guy had finally decided to use his trump card. After all, this Golden Lotus is really capable of harming the Demon Lord even at the immortal stage. And the insignificant body that has just returned to the virtuoso stage. There is no way he can withstand something like this, but fortunately he already knows the original plot. With these thoughts, he activated his stone traps, and the stone dragons immediately spat out, which attacked the Golden Lotus and made several holes in it. And the Demon Lord meanwhile thought that he was prepared for anything in advance, and there was nothing impossible in getting out of this situation because the legacy of the Demon Lord cannot be underestimated. After these thoughts, the Golden Lotus was destroyed by demonic energy. The main character immediately started screaming that his teacher was a lying bitch, and he tried to kill this demon because he trusted her, and now she ruined his life. After that, the guy turned around and saw that the Demon Lord was standing behind him, saying that it was time for them to end this battle. The main character began to step back and ask himself, is he really going to die today? After all, if he had listened to the advice of his mentor, he would not have done this. He began to reproach you for being so stubborn. The Demon Lord, meanwhile, rejoiced and thought that he had been waiting for this moment for too long. And while he was crushing this ant, he would be able to survive the first episode of the plot. The main character stumbled and fell on his back, but immediately got up and began to beg the demon not to come near him. Suddenly, a voice was heard in this room, this guy's teacher, and also part-time the sister of the Demon Lord, who asked her brother to stop. The third student immediately turned to the voice and took out a blade, asking who it was. The woman radiated incredible energy. She was the lord of her temple and was now clearly stronger than the Demon Lord. Meanwhile, the Demon Lord himself was thinking that the girl was never described in the original game and there were only a few mentions of her. But this body immediately recognized her at first sight. It was his only younger sister whom he loved when he was under the tutelage of the strongest alchemist. The man clutched his chest due to the fact that he had an inexplicable pain in his heart. But he could not remember the time spent with his younger sister because the demonic arts seemed to have buried everything warm in him. And in the original plot, only Magnolia engagement ring. The Demon Lord said that he was surprised that the secretive saint decided to come in person and added that her presence had truly beautified the Venerable's blood storage. The girl looked into her brother's eyes and said that her student had offended him very much, so she asked what the Temple Lord plans to do with him. The Demon Lord smiled and said that being treacherous is not such a big problem for a person walking the path of a demon. After these words, he sharply raised his gaze to his sister and said that the one who offended him was not worthy of life. The girl noticed that, judging by the tone of the Temple Lord, negotiations make no sense. The main character began to shout that the teacher should not be afraid of him, and this guy is about to die, and this is an ordinary bluff. Because the demonic path has no prohibitions, and this is the best time to kill him and become famous. He continued to shout that if he missed this chance now, he would regret it all his life and would not be able to become famous. However, when he finished screaming, his teacher immediately swung her blade and cut off his hand. The student looked at his mentor in surprise and asked why she was doing this. But the woman only answered in a calm tone that, since he would die anyway, he could just as easily die from her sword, and at least his teacher would at least see him off on his final journey. From shock, the guy fell to the ground behind the tatai. And the teacher said that this was his punishment for disobeying the teacher's orders. The third student approached this woman and asked why she was interfering in her master's affairs. The woman asked in surprise why the third student calls this man her master. However, without waiting for an answer, she immediately said that this was too impudent and the juniors had no right to interfere, because when the venerable one met her teacher, she was not even born yet. The girls looked at each other angrily. Meanwhile, the Demon Lord thought that his little sister was probably quite stupid. After that, he looked at the body of the main character with the thought that this blow did not even kill him. And the woman is probably thinking about pretending to take his corpse to save him, and that's just ridiculous. So he definitely won't let this guy escape death. However, as he held his chest, he suddenly realized that this body's reaction seemed to want him not to resist his younger sister's trick. The Demon Lord began to remember that the information about his sister in the original game was impossible to decipher. So perhaps his actions could lead to the emergence of a hidden route and the possibility of the storyline bringing more benefits than killing the main character. The Demon Lord's younger sister turned to her brother and said that she wanted to take her disciple to bury him, and asked if the Lord would refuse such a simple request. The Demon Lord immediately said that if he had a request to the Demon Lord, then she must agree to one of his conditions. The woman sighed heavily and added that the man really doesn't allow anything to be done freely. And then she asked what his conditions were. The Demon King began to say that the Section Lord selection ceremony would take place in a month, and then the Demon Lord would inform the Saint about this, and she would have to fulfill his request. The woman raised her student with the words that she hoped that her brother would also fulfill his promise when the time came, and also said that she hoped that the Lord would not ask her for something impossible, so first she would take the corpse. As soon as she took the body of her student in her hands, she immediately headed towards the exit at full speed. The third student asked her master in surprise, "Is he really going to follow the will of this old witch?" The demon lord did not answer his disciple and shouted loudly, calling his younger sister. He said that at the foot of Mount Juyi, a never-fading magnolia grows, and her older brother did not forget any of this. As soon as the woman heard these words, she immediately stopped in shock. After standing like that for a few seconds, she chuckled and headed towards the exit again. Meanwhile, the system rewarded the demon lord with another successful spread of great love, and added that he earned some more points. The man, meanwhile, was thinking that the decision to let the main character escape is very dangerous, but betting on his sister is not a bad idea, so she must fail. After this, the demon lord and his youngest disciple once again retired to the royal residence in the underground palace on a bed. The younger student thanked the demon lord for such a reward and was glad that she was again on the same bed with him. Meanwhile, notifications appeared in front of him that the system congratulates the player on the successful spread of great love and awards him the points he earned. She also added that the favor the younger student has reached a certain threshold and the player can begin a trust test. The demon lord looked at this notification in surprise and mentally asked the system, "What does trust testing mean?" A red notification immediately appeared in front of him. It was written that he must confess to the younger student the truthfulness of the plot and her family village, and after passing this test, he would receive a reward in the form of the eternal affection of his student. The demon lord immediately remembered the plot of her village and rose to his feet. The girl asked in surprise where he was going, and he replied that she had received a reward and should now follow him. Mentally, he thought that in the original work, the eldest most likely of the Shoji sect, one day brought disaster upon the world, causing a clash between the righteous and the demonic path. And after the death of the demon lord Qinling, the appearance of this blade seemed to prove that the current demon lord was the real culprit of the tragedy in her family's village, and this revelation made the younger student who came from the village where her family lived cry in tears, and she could not calm down for a very long time. The demon lord recalled that in the original game this was one of the strategies to defeat this girl, and if he had died at the hands of the main character, he would have brought her here and revealed the whole truth. They went down to one of the rooms, and in other words, even if the system had not informed him about this, he would not have been able to avoid one of the main plot points that he would have to face. The younger student looked around in surprise and said that the teacher kept her collection here and usually did not allow anyone to enter here. The man asked her to shut up and took her to one of the corners of the room. There stood an azure-colored blade, and the demon lord asked if the girl recognized this thing. The younger student immediately covered her mouth and replied that these were her uncle's things. The demon lord took this blade in his hands and said that it was so, and this was the sword of the guardian of the cultivator of the village where she was born. The demon lord said that he knows very well that the tragedy in her village is a trauma in her heart, and the village guard whom she respects so much is still listed as missing as of today. And everyone in the world believes that a certain Li Xianju is behind all this. The demon lord was silent for a while, and then looked into the eyes of his third disciple and said that it was all a lie, and in fact it was he who killed this guard, as well as the entire village, in order to use their living souls and turn this blade into a soul sword. The demon lord's youngest disciple's face immediately contorted in horror. The demon lord was thinking that he was very sorry, but he could explain the reason behind this. The demonic path has always been focused on results, and in order to continue the confrontation with the main character and the younger sister, he can no longer risk his reputation. So now he is very interested what reaction the younger student will have, and whether he will be able to trust her after that. The girl took her hands and briefly answered that she now finally understands everything. After that, the girl pressed the blade to her cheek and said that in this way their souls merged together and would never be separated, and all this time they lived happily together. The demon lord looked at her in surprise, unable to believe that she had made such conclusions. The girl, meanwhile, said that the teacher really understood her feelings because she never mentioned what happened in the village, but she also already knew about it because she couldn't help it and had researched this issue a long time ago. She said that she knows that Li is the lord of evil corpses, and his technique of evil corpses tortures people by turning them into nothing, not a demon or a ghost. He used evil corpses to infect the entire village of the family. And this is the absolute truth that she discovered during secret research. And all this must have happened because the village guard had no other choice but to give his life and sword to the teacher and ask him to help everyone free themselves from the torment of inhuman evil energy so that everyone could be reunited as pure, living souls. The girl continued to say that when faced with incurable evil corpses that had nothing to do with the teacher, he was really ready to lend a helping hand and save everyone from turning into an evil weapon. And it turns out that the teacher is the most conscientious person in the world with great love. The younger student sat down on her knees in the middle of the room and said that the teacher was not only not angry at her self-will, but he himself decided to tell her the whole truth. So she was very, very happy that she could serve the teacher in this life. The demon lord, meanwhile, was thinking that this girl's deduction process was quite accurate. But why does she treat it this way? After all, compared to the demon lord, she is even more obsessed and sick in the head. But while he was thinking about this, alerts appeared in front of him about the fact that the younger student was able to pass the trust test and the player earned the eternal devotion of this girl. The man looked at her and thought that he was a demon lord who did terrible things, but the pure and young girl was now kneeling in front of him and fervently worshipping him. And this makes him think that he really is going further and further down the path of a pervert. After that, he returned to his chambers with the thought that despite all this, he had finally managed to cope with the last trauma of this girl. After that, he remembered his younger sister and decided to leave other problems aside for now and figure out how to use this opportunity. After all, his memories of the past are cut off just when he left his younger sister among the corpses. And to this day, he only remembers her tear-stained face and how she threw the withering magnolia tree. So his memories of what it was like before were sealed by the demon lord who lived before in this body, because he considered it an emotional weakness. The demon lord decided that he needed to find a piece of his memory so that he could tell him how to end the main character once and for all. He was also glad that today he earned a lot of points, so now he can open something in the spatial store. After that, he immediately opened a store and spent all his money to open the platinum chest for the first time. A notification immediately appeared in front of him that he must choose one of 3 treasures. But the most useful one turned out to be 3 corpses of cicadas, poisonous insects of the 7th class. And after completing the technique, it can be transformed into the golden cicada, and this dough is related to the cultivation of the poison technique. However, after a little reflection, the demon lord decided that 3 corpses of cicadas are useless to him, because he can kill 13 different types of insects of the 9th class. So all that remains is the dream bed of boundless happiness. This is an earthly class item, and with dual cultivation, it can increase the endurance of his flesh for a long time. And the more people there are, the stronger the effect will be. The demon lord immediately imagined what it would look like and was a little embarrassed, but decided that strength is still the most important thing, and increasing the stamina of your body means becoming stronger. So he chooses the dream bed of boundless happiness and saves it in his inventory. The next step was that the demon lord decided that it was time for him to deal with the second student. Meanwhile, the demon lord's younger sister was healing her student. He said that he was in incredible pain, and his teacher should avenge her student because the demon lord was clearly bluffing and would soon die from poison. The woman asked in a quiet voice how a piece of shit like him dares to try to kill the demon lord. She also added that her brother knows that the guy is alive and he deliberately let him go for her sake. The main character began to ask her what she was talking about, and the girl ordered him not to move, because if he dares to act on his own again, then she will take him personally. The guy looked into her eyes with fear and said that he understood everything. The woman continued to say that the ceremony for selecting the Lord of the Sections would take place in a month, and she could not allow him to ruin the reputation of the Lord of this temple now. The student immediately became happy and asked if his teacher had finally decided to participate in this. The woman said with a smile that she needed the key to the Tower of Flaming Demons, so she went there to get it. The main character immediately said that this is the forbidden zone of the sect, and he cannot understand why his teacher needs this key. The woman looked out the window and briefly replied that the villain had buried something in the Tower of Flaming Demons, and she wanted to find it and see what exactly he was up to. Meanwhile, the second student stood with her friend on the edge of the cliff. She enjoyed the view, and her friend said with a smile that this demon should have already gotten what he deserved, so she wants to say that they should celebrate this event. The second disciple of the demon lord said that her teacher had died and his sins had disappeared, so no one should continue to slander him. The blue-haired girl hugged her friend and said that in this case, they and the third student could go and dig a grave for him. The second disciple said that she was sure that the demon lord would not want to see her, no matter whether it was before or after his death, because she occupies an insignificant place in his heart. They continued to discuss the demon lord, and suddenly a younger sister appeared behind them and greeted her older sister. The girls immediately turned to this voice and asked where the corpse of this demon was now. The younger student ignored the question and turned to her older sister, saying that the teacher said he missed her. The girls looked at the younger student in surprise and asked her to tell everything from the very beginning. The younger student immediately fell to her knees and told everything she knew. The second sister's legs gave way, and she grabbed her head with the thought that in fact, the demon lord did not die, and coped perfectly with all the tricks of the main character. After this, the girl felt bad, and the younger student immediately ran up to her asking what was happening to her. The blue-haired girl briefly told the younger one that she was stupid and her older sister was poisoned by this demon. Second sister immediately asked her friend to shut up. After that, she looked at her younger sister and asked why the demon lord wants the second to come to him, because he knows that she is the mastermind of his murder and most likely wants her to go and say goodbye to her life in front of him. The younger sister immediately began to explain that she had not said anything about who was involved in the murder plan, and the teacher just wanted to invite the second student back to the temple for the trapeze. He also said that he wanted the older sister to try his cooking. The girls looked at the youngest in surprise and asked, "Is this true?" The younger one replied that it was, and the blue-haired girl looked at the second one and said that she shouldn't go there, but the girl with green hair immediately answered briefly that she had to go there. Out of nerves, she began to bite her nails and think that most likely the teacher plans to bewitch her the same way he did with "well done to your sister." She said that the demon lord underestimates her too much, and since she found out the truth about the poison in her body, I will never trust him again in my life. Half an hour later, they were already standing in front of the entrance to the living room of the Temple of Blood, and the younger one said that the teacher was already waiting for the older sister inside. And she also added that she was really jealous because the older sister would be able to spend time alone with the teacher. The girl did not answer anything to her younger sister and raised her hands to open the doors with the thought that since things had already come to this, she could not retreat now. She went inside and saw that the demon lord was sitting at the table, among various dishes. The second student thought that she had a reason why she should see this person. As soon as she walked inside, she immediately fell to her knee as a sign of respect and said that the defender of the main altar was greeting the Lord of the Guard. The man immediately answered her that with such an official address, she really made her teacher's heart ache. After these words, the girl gasped in surprise. The demon lord said that he knew that she wanted to ask him something, but added that she did not need his help. After all these years she had drawn a clear line between the teacher and herself, and now she was here to meet him. After these words, he stood up and said that she had no respect for her teacher at all, and was not even ready to call him her teacher. The girl looked up and wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Meanwhile, the demon lord said that the time had finally come to show his respect. The girl looked at him in surprise while he talked about how she should go to the bath with her teacher. She could not understand what her master was planning, but she understood that she could not refuse. After that, they headed to the second underground floor, the blood storage area where the immortal pool was located. The demon lord immediately undressed and climbed into it. Meanwhile, the girl stood hesitantly behind him. The demon lord said that once she entered this pool, she would block her cultivation and temporarily become like an ordinary person. The girl was embarrassed, and the demon lord continued to say that this would not affect her body and innate physique. The girl thought angrily that he was assessing her body as usual, but for the sake of her friends and other sisters, she must obey this demon. While she was thinking about this, the demon lord grabbed her leg. The girl screamed in fear, and the demon lord immediately threw her into the pool. After that, he hugged his second student and looked into her eyes, asking why she was wary even towards her teacher. The girl looked away and couldn't find anything to say. The woman thought that the demon lord always wanted to turn her into a human puppet and still hasn't done it just because her body has not yet matured. And she also remembered that in the past he would use the ruler of the celestial essence to measure. But today, why are you decided to touch her body directly? The girl closed her eyes with the thought that it was he who directly saved her from the lair of demons of another sect and gave her a home. But in the end, she was sure that he was just making plans for the future and was now finally going to demand what he is due. The demon lord leaned over this girl's ear and said that he had a gift for her. His breath made the girl's ears turn red. However, after these words, the teacher suddenly grabbed her tighter and together with her, ended up at the bottom of the pool. The girl looked around in fear and saw the body of some girl, which glowed with an incredibly warm light. The second disciple looked at her master and asked who this woman was and why she looked so much like the second disciple. The demon lord looked forward and said that in that year when he saved her from the demon lair, Everything that happened was thanks to the help of one person, and although it was difficult to determine his gender, despite the devilish charm, he was known as a very righteous person. However, for his own benefit, the lord of this sect was willing to cooperate with the demon lord to save the second sister. The man also said that his second disciple had a very special physique, and this guy wanted her to become his furnace. The demon lord said that the girl should know that in contrast to pair cultivation, when a person is used as a furnace, he most often dies, and the partner gains a higher level of strength. The demon lord swam closer to the body and said that what the second student is now seeing is a female doll made from otogi wood, created at the birth of the universe. And the doll is the spirit of the tree, and this is its exact copy which took 10 years to make, and it will be handed over to the head of the sect instead of the second disciple as a furnace. Meanwhile, the demon lord was thinking that in the original game, the truth was that the demon lord wanted to use the second disciple to exchange treasures with the sect leader, but until now, until he reveals the true body of the second disciple and comes up with this excuse, no one will be able to expose. The second student looked at her master in surprise and asked, "Did the teacher regularly measure her body all these years, and all this was in order to recreate the doll as quickly as possible in order to hand it over to the head of the sect?" The demon lord looked at his second student and said that he caused her a lot of pain, but he did this in order to protect her without breaking his promise. The girl was fascinated by this act. However, she immediately threw these thoughts away from herself because she thought that she could not allow herself to believe this demon, because she cannot be deceived as a younger sister. And if this is so, how will he explain the presence of 10,000 ants corroding the heart with poison in her body and evil runes on his older sister's belly? The girl was silent for a couple of seconds and said that she was very grateful to her teacher for telling her all this. However, she did not have time to finish, and the teacher immediately grabbed her hands. After that, he ran his hand over her stomach. And the girl, all red with shame and with tears in her eyes, begged her teacher not to do this. After all, she is his student, and if he does this, she will hate him all her life. However, a second later she gasped with pleasure and said that a very strange feeling was spreading through her body, after which she called the teacher her master. And screaming with pleasure, she asked him not to stop under any circumstances. When all this was over, the girl finally swam out of the pool and greedily gasped for air with her mouth. Following her, the teacher emerged and said that 10,000 ants, corroding her heart with poison, were removed from her body in the form of poisonous blood. However, after thinking a little, he said that in fact it was the poison of these ants that protected her heart. Above, the man took out one of the ants and showed it to her. He said that this poison protected her body and heart, and if someone was covetous of her health, that poisonous insect would remind her of the need to stay away by causing harmless pain. And if she had actually been subjected to violence, then these ants would also have released a force capable of protecting her. The demon lord also said that he did not expect that his second student would be so close to the main character, and added that she never understood the intentions of her teacher and even thought that her master wanted to harm her and could not understand who really wanted to harm her. He also sadly added that when his daughter grows up, he cannot persuade her to stay even if she wants. After that, the demon lord turned his back to her and said that now that she had received everything she wanted, she could turn around and leave here without any worries. The girl listened to all this with tears in her eyes and could not believe her mustache. Meanwhile, the demon lord enjoyed reading the notification that the system congratulated the player on spreading great love and credited him with a lot of points. And thanks to practice, his divine massage technique was improved to the 99th level. After that, the second student wiped her tears and quickly got dressed. She went out and saw that the third younger sister was waiting for her in the corridor. But the girl did not pay attention to her and quickly headed towards the exit. The younger student ran up to her older sister and I asked where she was going. Also, the younger student took out something from her bag and said that the teacher asked her to give 2 Mara fruits for the second sister. She also said that he added that this was her favorite dish when she was little, and said that during the ceremony of choosing the ruler sect, he will support her regardless of her position. Also, the younger student began to say that it was really strange because the second eldest sister and the teacher spent a lot of time together alone. She thought a little and asked her sister, why did the teacher ask to give these fruits? The second student silently looked at the fruit in her hands and recalled how on the first day she met this man, he handed her food with the words that she should eat more in order to grow strong and strong. The girl pressed these things closer to her and thought that after he kept it a secret for so many years, today he revealed everything he could. And this is too perfect a moment, so she doesn't understand and can't fully believe it. But it's not her teacher's fault. The girl looked at the fruit with a warm smile and thought that it was her fault that she still couldn't believe it. So she humbly asked her teacher for a little more time, because in the end, she would return to him and serve him just as the younger student is serving now. Simultaneously with these thoughts, the system displayed a notification to the main demon that he was receiving a few more points. In the Hall of the Black Moon, meanwhile, a girl with blue hair was lying in her room. She reasoned that she had never seen the demon lord with her own eyes, and he must be old, ugly, and extremely evil if he mocked his sister like that. After all, even though she is not related by blood to the second student, they are still connected by sisterhood. After all, they bound themselves with the seal of the mirror flower, and their souls can feel what the other feels at any time and in any place. The blue-haired girl stroked herself and thought that since the second student went to meet that demon, her body had become somehow strange, and she was very interested in where she was now and what this demon was doing to her. The girl with blue hair screamed with pleasure and swore that one day she would tear this demon apart for doing this to her sister. However, unexpectedly, she stood up because she heard a familiar voice. The girl immediately got dressed and went out to meet her beloved grandfather. She looked at her old man and asked in surprise what had happened to him and why he began to look so exhausted. The old man patted his granddaughter on the head and asked her to listen carefully because her grandfather's life would soon come to an end and he would no longer be able to protect her. The man paused for a moment and asked, "Is she ready to become the Kangming sect master?" The girl, with tears in her eyes, folded her hands as a sign of respect and said that she would listen to any instructions from her grandfather. After these words, a pleasant aura began to emanate from the old man, and he said that he would hold the great ceremony for choosing the sect lord, but would not use his power to appoint her directly to this position, because in order to defeat all the Grey, she would have to enlist the support of important forces herself. So he wants to know which of the four great lords of the temple is easiest for her to work with? The girl immediately replied that naturally this is the lord of the Shuluo temple, Ren Xiangfang, because he is her uncle and will definitely lend a helping hand. The old man sighed heavily and said that this might not happen. After all, the lord of this temple is cowardly and indecisive, and he gives up his righteousness for the sake of insignificant gain but always saves himself when faced with a big risk. Also, he will allow his wife to make all the important decisions and just one look from her, and he will be too scared to help. After these words, the girl thought a little and asked what about the Taoist Manhua from the Locha temple? Grandfather immediately said that this temple is the strongest and it has countless followers, students and vassals, and its power is growing every day. However, grandfather immediately asked his granddaughter what she thinks, why he respects the elders and does so much for the sect. The girl bowed her head and said that this man has great ambitions and he will definitely not follow her. After that, she said that in this case there was only one option left. This is the mysterious saint from the Yingyi temple. The grandfather bowed his head and said that the saint would not be able to help her because he sees that this lady of the temple has her own goals and they cannot cope with them. After drawing this, the granddaughter said that she cannot use 3 of the 4 great lords of the temple, and it turns out that the grandfather is trying to say that there is only one option left. He said that the girl understood everything correctly, and according to her father's last wish, she should become a Taoist couple with the demon lord from the Yuluo temple, because then the husband and wife would work together to strengthen the sect. The girl immediately grabbed her head with the thought that she would have to collaborate with the demon who is her sister's teacher. She thought that if she married a demon lord, her sister would treat her worse. She looked angrily at her grandfather and briefly replied that this does not happen, and she would definitely never marry this man. Meanwhile, the demon lord sat on his throne and listened to a report from a junior student who said that she saw something when the second sister went to the altar. The girl replied that she saw many wandering demonic path cultivators flying towards the Luocha temple. And there were literally thousands. And she also added that she heard that the Yingui temple, which always kept a low profile, was convening the leaders in the rest of the forces of the outer sections. As soon as the younger student finished her report, she began to think that the sect was going to change, and her teacher never liked to interfere in the affairs of the sect. Therefore, she was very interested in what he would do in such a situation. The demon lord looked at her youngest student with a smile and replied that it did not matter at all, so he would take the necessary measures. The girl with loving eyes looked at her teacher and added that her master was an incredibly powerful man. Meanwhile, the demon lord reasoned that after the previous test, the girl was now completely devoted to him, and perhaps they should stop this game between the master and the servant, which harms the personality of his youngest student. After thinking about this for some more time, he waved his hand and said that from today, they will return to the usual teacher-student relationship, and regardless of the situation, she should call him teacher. The girl's look immediately changed, and she asked why the master decided so, because being a servant is part of the unique personality of the younger student. She asked if the teacher really didn't love her anymore and said that in that case she could kill herself so as not to cause him trouble. The demon lord immediately began to say that he did not deny her personality and simply that such relationships must develop and change. The girl began to undress and throw her things on the floor with the question of whether she still remains a faithful servant of the teacher. And does the teacher really just want to change the address? She did not wait for an answer, and began to put on different clothes with the words that, since there is in her name hieroglyph of a star, and also because she is a servant of the teacher, who from now on the teacher can call her his star servant. With these words, she completely changed into a maid costume. The girl blushed, and with loving eyes said that from that day onwards, she would be the teacher's star servant and would fulfill all her master's wishes. The eldest disciple of the demon lord, meanwhile, continued to carry out her task in the Forbidden Land, on the Blackwater Mountain in the demon-suppressing tower. The monks looked in surprise at the girl who had just cut out almost the entire tower. They said that she was a spy from the demonic path, so they should not have trusted her so easily and allowed her to enter the tower. One of the strongest said that the girl is obliged to remove insect poison from his body, and if she has the courage, he will fight her with only his finger, and also if she wins, he will tell her absolutely everything. The eldest disciple of the demon lord laughed and said that the three deacons had really wasted their long lives, after which she asked, "Do they really expect any of the demons to fight them honestly?" One of the deacons said that the demoness could kill them if she dared. After all, they are the three eldest deacons of the Forbidden Land, and they will definitely be able to take revenge on her. Immediately after these words, the girl cut off his head with one blow. The rest of the deacons looked at their dead friend and said with fear that the demoness was truly evil. After that, the girl put some kind of chest on the floor, and she said that the wish of one of the deacons had already been fulfilled, so she was interested in what they both would say. She asked them if they were ready to give up the key to the box of 1,000 chances in which the sacred artifact was kept. The men were afraid and asked if she would leave them alive if they gave her the key. She said so, and it will be. And one of them immediately took out the key from his secret storage. The girl stood up and said that it would be better if they did this much earlier, and immediately after that, she swung her blade and cut the throat of the man who gave her the key. The last survivor immediately began shouting that the woman would be cursed by heaven and die a terrible death. The woman licked the blood from her fingers and said that she was the eldest disciple of the demon lord, so she would definitely be able to avoid such punishment. However, after that, she immediately shrank and grabbed her stomach with thoughts that perhaps her teacher had just influenced the evil rune in her body. She checked her stomach and saw that the evil rune was not activated, and decided that perhaps she had been poisoned. Through the pain, the girl thought that in any case, first she needed to send what this demon wanted back to the temple. She opened the chest and looked in surprise at the contents. Meanwhile, the demon lord was thinking about the plan, and the younger student was lying near his knees asking what he was thinking about. The demon lord said that he probably spoiled the younger student too much by allowing her to sleep under his feet, and there wouldn't be a next time, especially during this period. The girl asked, "Is the teacher worried about the upcoming sect master selection ceremony?" The demon lord briefly replied that perhaps it was so. The girl immediately climbed on top of her teacher, saying that she was very glad that she was able to guess her teacher's thoughts. The demon lord grabbed her leg, and inside he prayed for her to stop doing this, and after that the system notified him that since his divine messaging technique had reached the maximum level, he would no longer be able to gain any experience using it. The demon lord immediately got angry because he was just reprimanding his disciple and not using her, so he immediately started complaining about the system and saying that the system was slandering him too much. The younger student, meanwhile, looked at her master and said that she wanted to show him a great treasure. With these words, she took hold of her chest. The demon lord looked at her in surprise and asked what treasure. She says inside, think that she doesn't want her to show him something that won't pass the test in the original game. The girl with a smile took out the sign of authority of the Supreme Elder of the Blood Pill Palace from her chest. The demon lord looked at her in surprise and asked where she had the sign of one of the 10 Supreme Elders with her. The girl laughed and said that the Elder had offered a reward to anyone who could recreate the 9th level Heavenly Heartgrass, and she accidentally found out how it could be improved. And last night she collected all the ingredients from the demonic garden, purified them, and gave them to the Elder, so he thanked her. The girl hugged her teacher and pressed her chest against him, saying that she behaves stupid only in front of the teacher, but at other times. She is very smart, so she constantly thinks about how to help the teacher and their temple. The demon lord recalled that in the original game, the main character received this token from me as his teacher's resources, and helped Ye Hongyi gain an influential employee. And this strategy was intended for this girl's root. The demon lord smiled evilly because he didn't expect that the younger one would be able to steal this plot point from the main character. And probably this is a bonus to the absolute devotion of the younger student. After that, the demon lord, with a devilish smile, hugged his youngest student and pressed her closer to him, saying that this time she did a great job, and this is the reward she deserves. After sitting like this for a few seconds, he ran his hand over the girl's thighs several times and stood up from his throne. The younger student was in ecstasy from an overabundance of feelings, and the Lord was clearly saying at the same time that they needed to come out of solitude and destroy absolutely everything. With the power of thought, he opened the doors of the temple and headed out into the street, saying that absolutely no one would stop them. Meanwhile, the main character stood near the main altar of the Blood Pill Palace. He asked in surprise why now the elder did not need his 9th-level heavenly heart grass, because his grass was definitely real. The elder touched his mustache and said that someone had arrived before the main character, so the reward had expired. The main character asked in surprise how this could happen, because the elder's reward was valid for only 10 days, so he asked to tell who found this herb faster. The elder said with a smile that he was glad to tell this person that it was the 3rd disciple of the demon lord, and she was the one who found this herb on the 5th day after the reward was announced. And as for what kind of reward she asked for, he has no idea. The main character, meanwhile, remembered the girl and thought, was it really her own intention or the order of the demon lord? He shouted loudly that he would definitely tear these two apart someday. The elder laughed because the guy was so easily angered and said that his heart was not yet strong enough. After this, the main character rushed to his home and, walking through the forest, began to think about what he should do now. He approached the talking stone and asked the main character if the guy gave the grass of the heavenly heart to synthesize, which this stone spent several days. The main character looked at one of his teachers and wondered, couldn't he find a purer place to possess the spirit? After that, the main character told absolutely everything, and the teacher began with the sheets and asked why they managed to get ahead of him because he told him to do everything faster. The main character stood and listened as the pebbles said that the guy was the most worthless of all. However, unexpectedly, the main character's nerves ran out and he shouted, telling the teacher to stop talking nonsense because, in order to implement his plan to destroy the demonic sect, he first asked him to become a spy for 3 years, and then for another 3 years, and again for 3 years, and so he woke up for 10 years. Oh, the old man listened to all this and said that protecting mortals and destroying demons is the responsibility of their sect, so the teacher is sure that he does not want his 10 years of work with Peony to be in vain. Teacher said with a smile that last night he used spiritual discs to look into the future and discovered a big secret. The great elder of the Kanming sect died 7 days ago. The main character is surprised. He asked how this could be. After all, the great elder went to the Black Moon Hall 2 days ago and also appeared in front of his granddaughter and other family members. A piece of stone replied that it was his ghostly body and not a physical one, and also added that the remaining soul would also not last long. So we are talking about a divine weapon. The stone asked his student to come a little closer so that the stone could whisper something important in his ear. He added that the hero has a chance to earn Ye Hongi's trust and help her become a leader and make her his puppet. The main character, meanwhile, looked at the pile of shit on the head of the stone and thought that he did not want to get even closer. Meanwhile, the demon lord's younger sister was resting in her chambers. She was sleeping but muttering something in her sleep and clearly did not feel well. She dreamed of her childhood when the other students of the alchemist talked about her body becoming plump. Everyone laughed at her and said that the girl was turning into a pig, a big fat pig. She was angry but could not find anything to say to them in response. However, after a couple of seconds, she was surprised to find that someone had thrown his clothes over her shoulders. Looking at this man, she saw her older brother who covered her body and said that clothes could not only cover her body but also prevent all these heavenly rumors. She looked at him shyly and thanked him. However, after just a few days, she stood in front of her older brother and begged him to stop. Almost the entire sect was destroyed, and she asked why he was doing this. She tried to explain to him that the teacher could not harm them, and this was all a big misunderstanding. She also said that he was the person she admired the most, so she did not understand why he killing innocent students. The great demons looked at the girl and did not answer. At this moment, the demon lord's younger sister immediately woke up and looked around in fear. After that, she held her head indignantly because she was dreaming about this demon lord again. One of the servants approached her and said that all the vassals of the temple had gathered and were now waiting in the main hall. He also said that almost 2,000 demonic cultivators gathered in one of the temples, and they were all armed with their own weapons. The girl sadly said that these cultivators cannot sit still, even in the presence of the great aging. She also asked, "How is the Demon Lord Temple?" The servant replied that according to rumors, the Demon Lord had just come out of his blood vault, and he was happily walking through the garden holding his disciple's hand. The girl asked in surprise if the servant had mixed up something because it didn't look like him at all. The servant immediately fell to his knees and apologized to his mistress, saying that they could not unravel the motives of the Demon Lord. The girl replied that he is getting old, but he is still the same shameless, and he really holds the hand of his student in broad daylight. After that, the girl answered and said that less and less of the past Demon Lord remained in him, and perhaps he really deserved to die. In the name of the Devil Lord, together with his youngest disciple, hundreds of snowy peaks were heading to the main altar of the mountain range. The Demon Lord's nose itched and the younger student asked if everything was okay. He said that everything was fine, but inside he began to think that maybe someone was cursing him now. The younger student immediately hugged her master and asked if he was feeling better now. The younger student began to say that second sister once said that her body was hot, like an oven in winter, so the teacher could try to enter her. The Demon Lord grabbed her neck and said that this was due to her physique, because it was compatible with yin energy and cold sinister energy, and it was not related to the warmth of her body. After that, they moved on, and the younger student asked her teacher why they came to this deserted mountain corner if they were going to visit the main altar. The Demon Lord smiled and thought inside that he did this because he wanted to deprive the main character of the opportunity. After all, if he followed the original game and did not come here with the crowds, he would have an advantage. And since he was going to interfere with him, he would try very hard for this. Suddenly, the spirit of the ancestor Tsang Ming appeared on one of the peaks and greeted the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord folded his hands as a sign of respect and said that he was glad to see his ancestor. His student did the same and greeted the man. The elder began to say that the spiritual body that controls the ghosts is flawless and natural, without form or stain. So I wonder when the Demon Temple Lord plans to prepare this high-quality ingredient. The younger student put her hand on her chest and said that her teacher himself will decide when he needs it, so the progenitor need not worry about it. The old man laughed and remarked that the Lord of the Demon Temple was really good at managing his subordinates. He also added that he had been looking for the Demon Lord since they met and offered to talk. The Demon Lord realized that this was a great opportunity and ordered his youngest student to leave them alone. The girl obediently left, and they sat down in the cold snow. The old man began to tell that at the very beginning, when the primeval gods and demons created the world, one girl was born, the third war began between the righteous and demonic ways and blah blah blah. The old man literally could not shut up. The Demon Lord, meanwhile, listened to all this and did not understand why this person's spirit is not going to dissipate. He clearly does not look like a person who is going to die. And the Demon Lord was also indignant because he does not have a control button to skip all this. Finally, the old man finished telling a long story and noticed that his shoulder was starting to disappear. He sadly said that he didn't have much time left. Stretching out his hand, he showed one of the two divine artifacts of his sect. He said that this was a soul ring, and the status of its owner would be slightly lower than the status of a sect master and would be admired by millions of followers. The old man handed this ring to the Demon Lord and asked if the Demon Lord would help his granddaughter if he received this item. The Demon Lord examined the ring and asked, "Is the Lady of the Black Moon his chosen heir?" The old man said that if the Demon Lord has his own thoughts on this matter, he said that he understands everything. But still he asked his little men to help if the Demon Lord can do so. And if this is impossible, then he can take her place. The Demon Lord took the ring and began to think that he had heard these words somewhere, but decided not to refuse because this was a great chance to take the post of head of the sect. The old man also said that he had two more things that he would like to talk about. The first is Hong Wudao, Hongyi's father. The man said that this man's last wish was to marry Hongyi to Bai Qinlin, so that they could rule the sect together. The Demon Lord immediately got scared because the words about taking her place could mean marrying her. And in the original game, the Demon Lord would already be dead, and if he knew that he had a hidden bride. However, after listening to all this, the Demon Lord said that this is nothing, and he will think about it in the future, so he asks now to tell about the second thing. The old man said that there are rumors that recently the Demon Lord suffered a severe defeat, so the old man wants to find out if this is true, because in this case, their demon sect risks being destroyed. The Demon Lord said that it was true and he had recently lost all of his cultivation. The old man looked at this guy in fear. However, the Demon Lord said that he had regained his strength, so if someone came back and threatened the demons, he would take action again. Meanwhile, the main character came to the main altar in front of the mountain gate, where he was met by people who asked the guy to leave because their ancestor had been in solitude for a long time and was not going to see anyone. At times, he begged to be let in because he urgently needed to see his ancestor, because time waits for no one, and if they delay a little longer, it will be too late. Immediately after these words, someone threw this guy away with one strong spell, hitting him painfully on the ground. It was Hongi who told him to shut up, because if their head of the text heard that he was spreading such rumors, he would immediately have his dog's head cut off. So she orders him to leave and not force her to do it again. The main character looked at the girl and remembered his teacher, and also the fact that he did everything he was told. But it didn't work. After some time, the demon lord entered Yuluo Temple, the palace of the temple lord. He sat in the main place and thought that the residence of the temple lord was incredibly cool, and he should have left the blood storage area earlier and had fun here. After that, his face changed and he muttered under his breath that the danger in the blood storage had finally passed, and now he had to start extracting the 5 organs of the demon lord to develop them to the level of nascent souls. Among them are the hearts that are located in the fire demon tower, and the key is with the 3 supreme elders, and he can get it from him without the permission of the sect head. So by helping the blue-haired girl become the head of the sect, he fulfills the old man's desire and serves his interests. After all, now that he has acquired the Ring of Souls, and he only has the soul sword left for a complete set, which is now being hunted by his eldest student. After that, the demon lord thought about the fact that the personality of this girl should be the most difficult to influence with great love. Therefore, he needs to come up with a plan to solve the problems in her heart. The image of this woman immediately popped up in his head, and he remembered that she had a mark on her stomach that he could somehow play well with. The senior disciple, meanwhile, was in the heavenly water city at the street market. When she walked nearby, all the men stopped breathing and watched her graceful gait and figure. The girl went to one place, and a henchman immediately approached her and asked what she needed. The senior student asked him to tell the fat shopkeeper to come out because the Eastern King of Hell was looking for him. When the servant heard about the Eastern Hell King, his face immediately contorted in fear. Meanwhile, the girl walked inside the room and sat down on one of the chairs cross-legged. A couple of minutes later, Fatty was already standing in front of her, saying that he was the guard of the Crimson Pigs of the Yulo Palace. He held out one package and said that this was the very item that the demon lord was looking for. The girl looked at it and ordered him to personally take it back to the temple. She also said that Fatty would be required to swallow the pill in her hand. The fat man looked at the 7th body-melting pill in horror and said that he had always worked hard and never relaxed, and this looked like a punishment. The girl held a pill in her hand and said that he must swallow it, otherwise he would die by her hand. The man obediently took the pill from her hands, and preparing for the worst, he swallowed it without even drinking water. After that, he turned around and said that it was time for him to go. When the girl was left alone, she began to think about the fact that she hoped that this was the last thing she did for this demon, and also worried about the plan of the 2 remaining sisters who were going to kill the demon lord. The girl looked out the window with the words that she had been living in the shadow of this demon for many years, and her heart had long been stained by him. But her younger sister is still young, so they, as older sisters, must help her escape from the evil of this demon. Suddenly her stomach hurt again. She took it with the thought that she didn't understand why the pain flared up again because this demon did not activate the evil rune, and perhaps she was simply poisoned. The girl remembered the moment when she opened the box and decided that this could happen right then. She was getting worse and worse and she was writhing in pain and was indignant because she did not take any elixir with her to cleanse herself from the poison, and if I got into the meridians, it meant that she would die. The girl closed her eyes, resigning herself to the fact that if this happens, then perhaps this is her fate, because in any case, being under the control of this demon is a living hell and she finally looks to stand free. However, after these thoughts, tentacles suddenly crawled out of her veins. These tentacles began to envelop her body, and she embarrassedly thought that these were the tricks of her teacher. The girl realized that in this way he was trying to save her from the poison, and thought that even now he could not let her go to another world. Suddenly, a projection of the demon lord himself appeared behind her, who told her to listen to him and calm down, after which he leaned closer to her and said that her body was now on the floor, not dressed, and in general in this world only her teacher could save her. After that, a strange sensation came to her throat, and she began to cough. After a couple of seconds, she spat out blood mixed with the poison that was in her body. The girl wiped her mouth and thought that her teacher was even able to neutralize the poison that had entered the Dantian. And he was probably the only one in the whole world who could do this from a distance. While she was thinking about this, the tentacles began to slowly move towards her crotch. She shouted that she didn't want this and tried to stop them with her hands, after which she began to beg her teacher to stop. Her face turned red with shame, and the teacher's projection stood behind her and said that this poison-suppressing tower demon should not be underestimated, and even her teacher could not avoid minor injuries. So she should cooperate with him, and he should suck it all out at once. After this, the tentacles penetrated deeper, and the girl squirmed with shame and pleasure with the thoughts that there is something wrong with this demon. After all, she is just one of his pawns. So why would he waste his strength on neutralizing the poison for her at a distance? In her. There were thoughts in my head that perhaps the other sisters did something to change his nature. While the tentacles were sucking me out of her body, she remembered her teacher who had recently congratulated her on her birthday. However, she immediately tried to discard these thoughts because she understood that this was still the same demon lord, merciless and merciless, and he must want her to be indebted to him so that he could control her spirit even more. While she was thinking about this, a voice was heard outside the door. Someone asked in surprise who was inside. The girl immediately realized that this voice belonged to the Third Royal Highness, braiding, and she quietly asked why this man was here. The man behind the door was glad that they really heard his sister and said that he heard that she came to the Heavenly Water City to train. So he asked around and found this store because, after all, such an area makes a deep impression on everyone who passes by. After that, the person stood behind the door a little for me and asked me to come inside. The older student, meanwhile, sat completely shrouded in her teacher's tentacles and burned with shame while his projection stood behind her. Plucking up courage, she said that it was forbidden for a person to enter. However, the tentacles still continued to suck me out, which is why her voice sounded as if someone was now bringing her pleasure. The man behind the door said that the last time he ran into his sister, he accidentally heard the sound of crying. But then she didn't notice him, but he was very worried about her. The girl's legs were cramping from there with pleasure, and she could barely find the strength to answer and thank His Highness for his care. But it was also said that now everything was fine with her. It was becoming more and more difficult for her to restrain her moans of pleasure, and she asked to leave her, hinting that it was time for the man to return. Meanwhile, the man behind the door asked in surprise why the sister was breathing so heavily. The girl could barely restrain herself and said that everything was fine with her. So she asked the person to leave quickly and not interfere with her rest, because without rest, she would not be able to recover. Unknown, and said goodbye and said that they would see each other perhaps later, after which he turned around and began to leave this place. As soon as the girl realized that she was left alone, she immediately began to beg her teacher to stop this suffering. However, she was surprised to find that as soon as she asked it was all over, she looked at her body in surprise and thought that this guy was really able to neutralize the entire self in her body. After this, the projection of the demon lord put his hand on her shoulder and said that he was very glad that the girl was able to find the soul sword for the demon lord. But he did not like that she was risking her life to complete the task. The demon lord began to disappear and reminded her that there would be no next time. The girl was left alone with herself and burned with shame. And meanwhile, the demon lord again received points for spreading great love. The system also said that the teacher opened a new chest, called a chest with diamonds. Its price is 50,000, and by typing more than 100, he will unlock another store. The demon lord smiled. And he added that he did not expect that he would almost double his points just by helping his student neutralize the poison. But he was still happy with this situation and said that maybe her hatred for the teacher is strongest, so he earns more points when he expresses great love. However, the smile on his face immediately disappeared and he began to think about what kind of person was behind the door. Because his student called him the Third Royal Highness, and this can only be one character. The so-called protagonist of the second expansion, called Battle of the Dynasty Fleaboo, is the third principal of the Great Chu dynasty named Ling Mo. The Demon Lord recalled that from the very beginning of this expansion, players can choose between the path of the original protagonist and this prince. But in the original game, there was definitely no contact between the prince and the third disciple. So it can be said that there are clearly unpredictable changes in the original plot. The Demon Lord began to think that this was probably the legendary butterfly effect, and that new storylines that were not previously in the original game would probably appear soon. After these thoughts, the Demon Lord stood up from his seat and said out loud that, "Be that as it may, so far this principle does not pose any threat to him. And now the most important thing is to crush the ant, which is the original protagonist of the story, because the ceremony of choosing the head of the sect is approaching." This is an early visit to this temple lord. The blue-haired girl, meanwhile, was rushing around the room, thinking that everything was definitely over for her. Then she began to think, should she tell the second disciple of the Demon Lord that the last wish of her grandfather and father Tatai is for her to marry the Demon Lord? After all, they sealed the mirror flower together and swore to protect each other forever. So she definitely should talk about such things. The head-haired girl was angry and clenched her fists and braided with thoughts that if she really marries the Demon Lord and becomes his wife, then the second sister would probably be very angry. After all, the Demon Lord really deserves to die. The girl plucked up courage and headed for the exit with the thought that she must tell her sister the truth and come up with a plan together. Because her closed sister is many times smarter than ordinary people and she will definitely find a way. However, as soon as the blue-haired girl approached the door to go out, she was surprised to find that she was already standing there, and her sister looked down sadly. The blue-haired girl looked at her sister and asked why she looked like a cat and what happened to her. She also said that she was very worried after that night, the blood storage facility, so she wanted to know if her sister was okay. The second disciple of the Demon Lord immediately said that she was fine and she just wanted to rest a little in her friend's room, after which she took a short pause and offered to talk about everything that happened a little later. The blue-haired girl bowed her head and said that they could talk about it whenever she wanted. After that, the second disciple of the Demon Lord walked into the club room and stared at herself in the mirror. After that, she took off her clothes in one deft movement. The girl began to think that she was a real disgrace because if you think that she allowed the commanding demons to touch her body, then the situation is simply terrible, and how is she now going to look her sister in the eyes after this? The girl thought that when her teacher hugged her at sunset, she clearly could have stopped her path to protect her innocence. However, she did not do this, and now looked in the mirror at her reflection with the words that she hated herself and everything she did. And the worst thing is that her consciousness is now trying to reproduce the moment when the Demon Lord hugged her. And the more she tried not to think about it, the more clearly her body remembered every feeling of that moment. By the way, the second disciple of the Demon Lord wrapped herself in a blanket and began to say that she was very sorry. However, after a couple of minutes, she calmed down and thought that she still had one last chance. The girl blushed after remembering the Demon Lord and had not yet had time to move away, but thought that she could help her sister become the head of the sect at the ceremony for choosing the head of the sect. And only then she looks to borrow the power of the common altar to completely free herself from the Demon Lord. Temple Lord Ren, meanwhile, was at the Julo Temple in the Temple Lord's palace. He was pacing back and forth and was clearly nervous. After all, his ancestor wanted him to support Hongi during the election ceremony for the Great Lord of the Sect. But this Taoist Menghu wants to enter into an alliance with him and wants him to help him take this position. The ruler of this temple approached his wife and bowed his head and asked what he should do. The girl didn't even pay attention to him and calmly painted her eyelashes. When she finished, she said that he should have made a decision long ago in the depths of his heart. The man immediately said that he didn't really want to support the blue-haired girl and would give preference to his cousin, because after all, they already have a ready-made temple, after which he asked his wife what she thought about it. The girl immediately stood up from her throne and said that she thought he was a stupid piece of trash. She slapped him and returned to her place with the words that the Taoist, Manhwa ruthless, is arrogant and tyrannical, and he is doing everything to expand his power. So, if the husband thinks that this man can share part of his success with him instead of absorbing their temple, then he just really walks. The man immediately apologized and said that his wife was incredibly wise, after which he asked if this meant that they should support the young girl because, although she is young, she is his niece after all, so he can lend her a helping hand. His wife got angry and hit him right in the stomach with her heel, saying that he was a real fool. After that, the man fell on his back and moaned with pleasure. Meanwhile, the woman said that in this chaotic situation they should make their temple neutral and everyone should try to defeat them. After which she also ordered him to remember the phrase that the bigger the waves, the more valuable the fish. The man immediately began to say that he understood everything, after which he began and said that if they were neutral and the Demon Lord intervened, the situation would become uncontrollable. The woman looked at her husband and giggled a little and said that her husband was a real idiot, and the Demon Lord would definitely not interfere with anything. She put one of her hands between her legs and began to talk about how such a stupid person as her husband would never be able to imagine how amazing the Demon Lord is, because what this man strives for is something that neither her husband nor she can ever wish for, and these worldly matters are simply unworthy of his attention. After that, she waved her foot and threw her husband's shoe, saying that he was trash who couldn't do anything. And even if his wife undressed and stood in front of him, he would still stand silently and look at her. Her husband obediently bowed his head and said that this is the real truth because he is trash. After that, he pressed his face to the shoe that she threw to him and said that he didn't even deserve his wife. Meanwhile, The servant outside the door said that he had a report. He said that you were visiting him from the Lord of the Demon Temple. The man immediately got scared and asked himself why the Demon Lord was looking for him, and his closed wife blushed with embarrassment and was clearly happy about such a visit. Meanwhile, the servant outside the door said that the Demon Lord has come here to talk with the wife of the Lord of this temple, and asks that the Lord of this temple observe what is happening outside and not let outsiders hear the details because the conversation will be very important. The man immediately became enraged and began to take out his blade, saying that it was too much to ask for such a thing when entering someone else's territory. The Lord of this temple waved his blade and said that if the Demon Lord really dares to break in here, then this will not end well for him. The wife of this lord took incredible pleasure from the fact that the Demon Lord was near her, and her legs even began to tremble. She could barely tell that this man had already entered here. The lords of this temple looked at her in surprise, and the Demon Lord immediately appeared behind him, emitting a terrible aura. The man looked at the Demon Lord, thinking that he had not seen this man for a long time, but noticed that he really had the aura of a Demon Lord who looked down on the world, and it was not surprising that when he mentioned him, an expression of admiration appeared on his wife's face. He also began to think that according to rumors, he has an incredibly strong innate demonic body, and if he does something to his wife, she most likely will not even be able to bear it and will be broken. However, he threw away these thoughts and looked into the eyes of the Demon Lord, asking how he dared to enter here and why no one except his wife felt it. Jin Yang, the wife of this idiot, looked at the Demon Lord and said that he has an excellent breath concealment technique, and it is clearly the best energy concealment technique in this world because even with their cultivation, they cannot sense it at all. The Demon Lord said with a smile that, as expected from Jin Yang, she is indeed very knowledgeable and much stronger than some people. Hearing that the Demon Lord praised her, the girl immediately blushed and said that she was unworthy of his words. Jin Yang's husband called the Demon Lord a bastard and asked how he dared to show such disrespect. The man also said that he was warning the Demon Lord not to be too arrogant because, in those distant times when the owner of this temple traveled to the eastern lands to become a Demon Lord, the current Lord, the demons still had pants even without the cutouts. However, the Demon Lord did not even pay attention to his words and began to approach the lady with the words that he wanted to discuss something with her. He also added that he wanted to take the bedroom to discuss it. The Lord of this temple almost went crazy from such impudence and said that the grave for the Demon Lord had already been dug. After such words, the girl got angry and said that her husband was a real idiot, and if he continued to say such words, he would simply die. After that, using her strength, she attacked her husband and threw him several meters away. The Demon Lord looked at this and said that her husband was still in this building, and the girl used her powers to throw him out of the doors. After that, the doors closed on themselves, and the Demon Lord asked why the girl was so angry because her husband was simply afraid that the Demon Lord would mock her. The girl got up from her seat and said that she didn't ask this idiot to be so annoying and it was his mistake. She began to approach the Demon Lord and say that now that they were alone, he could finally say why he came to her temple so late at night. The Demon Lord looked at her body and said that she herself would soon find out about everything. He paused for a moment and said that since Madame was so straightforward, he would get straight to the point. The girl came closer to him and began to listen, and the Demon Lord said that at the ceremony for choosing the Sect Lord, which would take place in half a month, she should be on his side. The girl took her hand and looked away with the question, why does the Demon Lord think that she will agree with his words? The Demon Lord used magic to lift her shoe, and then he leaned down and took the foot of this woman, saying that he would give a reason that she could not resist. The Demon Lord brought the blunt closer to her leg, and the girl, embarrassed, did not understand what he was doing. The Demon Lord, meanwhile, recalled that before coming here, he specially exchanged the secondary character story completion card in the store for 2,000 points, and using this card will allow him to find out the hidden background of a particular minor character who does not reveal the main plot. The girl looked at the Demon Lord in confusion, while he thought that fate was now in his hands. He put the shoe on her foot and said that it would be better, after which he added that she definitely did not want her husband to lose his title as the Lord of the Temple. The girl looked at the Demon Lord with embarrassment and said that he was clearly crossing the line of what was permitted. However, the Demon Lord smiled and said that he had an even more outrageous story that he would like to tell her. The main character of this story is called Yang Jinner, and 20 years ago, the head of the Yang family was careless and killed Emperor Yuan Tai of the Great Dynasty. And with the exception of Yun Jinner, 300 family members were executed. And at that time, the saint son of the sect named Zai wanted to get his hands on his true phoenix deity spiritual body, so he allowed Yun Jinner as a saint daughter. but he actually wanted to use her as a furnace. And unexpectedly, she managed to take advantage of her only opportunity to escape, and during her escape, she met an expert in the demonic path named Ren. And although this guy's constant harassment of her was disgusting, he was still a eunuch, so it never led to anything. And the girl, in order to get rid of the persecution of G, married this guy and became a virgin wife. After that, the demon lord came closer to the girl and said that he was talking about this because he knew. And if the secret of the temple lord accidentally became known to everyone, and he lost his position as the lord of the temple and was expelled from the sect, then how, in her opinion, would the guy who I wanted to make a furnace out of her body for my self-development? The girl looked at the demon lord and said that this was too mean a trick. The man, meanwhile, said that there is nothing in this world that he, the demon lord, would not do, and he also added that now she knows what she needs to do in order to keep everything secret. The girl had a storm of emotions in her head, but aggression took over. She called the demon lord the most vile person and swung her leg to strike with the words that she hated him. However, the demon lord easily caught her leg. After that, he took her by the waist and moved her closer to him, saying that she should not blame him, because if she wants to find someone to blame, then she should blame her weakling husband. The girl ran into the demon lord and asked him to let her go, and also added that the demon lord was too arrogant and didn't know anything at all. The girl looked into his eyes and said that that escape was not the only opportunity she had. She was silent for a while and shouted that his other opportunity was the demon lord himself. The man was surprised and looked at her with thoughts that he didn't understand when this could have happened and why he couldn't remember anything about it. The demon lord let go of her leg and said that he did not understand what she was talking about, and if she thought that he did something bad for her, then that was her problem. However, as soon as he let go of her leg, the girl immediately hugged him and kissed him. After that, the girl turned away a little and embarrassedly asked the demon lord if he had ever been kissed by a passionate woman in his entire peerless and invincible life. His third student immediately appeared in the head of his demon lord, but he still said that this had never happened. The woman turned away and said that this was very good, because in this case he would not be able to forget her for the rest of his life, and this would be his punishment for his forgetfulness. However, when she immediately grabbed her face with the thoughts that she didn't understand what she was talking about and why she was behaving this way because she was a married woman. Meanwhile, the system congratulated its owner on the points he earned due to the spread of great love. The demon lord immediately smiled and thought that even though he was still not sure of the logic of counting points, he could still just continue to accumulate them in this way, because in order to cope with the main opponent who is Mu Xinlan, who has already managed to deprive this body of cultivation. No number of points is excessive. The blue-haired girl, meanwhile, was in the mountains and trained hard with the words that her second sister can always trust her, because she will never betray and give everything she has to take the position of a ruler and help her escape from this demon. With each blow, she destroyed the part and said that this unfortunate and hunchbacked old man is the demon lord, a real abomination, not a person, and she will never marry him even if she has to die. However, I suddenly stopped my workout because I heard someone in the distance slowly clapping their hands. The girl stopped and looked into the distance in surprise, but could not see the person because there was a strong wind with snow. And meanwhile, the unknown person said that, as expected from the most perfect saint body of ice crystal and jade in the Ye family, her ball handling technique worthy of praise. However, he immediately added that he was very sorry, but such an attack would not have even left a scratch on him. The girl looked at the unknown person and said that such a level of demonic power as he definitely could not be achieved by an ordinary expert of the demonic path. The demon lord came out of the shadows and greeted the girl, saying that he was very glad to see the Lady of Hall E. The girl realized who was standing in front of her and asked why the demon lord came to her modest Hall of the Black Moon. The demon lord smiled and said that she probably wants to take the position of Sect Lord. The girl looked into his eyes and asked what he meant, but inside she was thinking that even an arrogant person like Manhwa is unsure of being able to take the place of the head of the sect. But this guy said it so casually, as if he would support her and the others, will easily win as soon as she opens her mouth. The blue-haired girl was silent for a while and said that before talking he must first answer one question for her. She asked him if the old ancestor had recently communicated with the demon lord. The demon lord said that it was so. Many of the girls cowered in fear, and she said that to some extent she now understands the situation. However, she immediately shouted that he might not even dream, and she would never marry him for anything in her life. Her heart and body had already been given to another person, and it was simply impossible. After that, she fell silent a little and looked down and said that this was impossible, at least for the moment. The demon lord smiled and waved his hand and asked, Does she really think that this is what he wants? After that, he said that he doesn't care about titles or fortune or show-off. He began to approach the girl with words that she had lost her parents when she was little and the old ancestor did not have time to be with her, so she was left alone and could not rely on anyone. So he felt sorry for this girl. After that, he extended his hand and said that if the hostess of the hall does not mind, then he is ready to make her his daughter. After that, the girl involuntarily took his hand and looked into the eyes of this demon lord. For her, it was clearly a huge shock, and she thought that this was real torture. After that, the demon lord handed over the Ring of Souls and said that this was not a joke. The girl looked at his hand and asked if her grandfather really gave him the Ring of Souls. After that, she took the demon lord's hand again and said that if she takes into account her grandfather's last request, then she naturally cannot object to it. So now they are formal allies, and if she takes the position of the sect, then she will not treat him badly. However, the demon lord came as close as possible and said, "Do you think he wants to get a guarantee from her right now?" The girl blushed with anger and embarrassment and asked, "Does the demon lord really want to become her father?" The man corrected her and said that he was going to become her godfather. After that, he smiled maniacally and clenched his fist, saying that the Ming sect in the world is often called a church, because once upon a time there was a wonderful story about a young leader who respected the godfather, and in the future, she will become the head of the sect and he will become her godfather, and together, they will return this sect to its former glory. The girl continued to hold the demon lord's hand and ask how the groom could unexpectedly become a godfather. But while they were discussing this, the voice of the main character suddenly rang out and said that the senior student wants to meet with Ye. The demon lord looked over his shoulder with a smile and thought that, just like in the original game, this hero came here at a certain time, and the demon lord was also glad that he managed to get ahead of him. Otherwise, this ant would have started an affair with Ye Hongyi. The girl began to remember this guy, and realized that this was the same guy who burst into the main altar and made a noise. She looked at the demon lord and asked if there was anything wrong with meeting him. The demon lord smiled and looked into her eyes with the words that in the end, their new relationship still lacked formal mutual understanding. Inside, he was thinking that since he had already made such a decision, he would follow it to the end. The main character of this story, meanwhile, walked back and forth near the Hall of the Black Moon and waited for E. Suddenly, he heard her voice and immediately turned around, glad that the mistress had finally come. However, as soon as he turned his head, he noticed that she had come accompanied by the demon lord, who gently hugged her shoulder and waved his hand to him, saying that this was the eldest disciple of the Hua Temple Lord. And it was simply an incredible coincidence that I came here now and they saw each other. The main character looked at the demon lord in surprise and asked why he was here and what was he doing here. The demon lord hugged the owner of the hall and said that as he could see, he had a friendly and personal conversation with her, and given their relationship, such interaction was normal. The owner of the hall closed her eyes in embarrassment and said that the demon lord was right, and there was nothing illogical here. Meanwhile, the demon lord's hand sank lower and lower, and the girl thought that she didn't understand. Was he speaking as a husband or as a father? The main character looked at all this and asked, what is the relationship between the two of them? However, as soon as he asked this question, the demon lord looked straight at him angrily, and his aura immediately became overwhelming, after which he asked, does this guy have the right to ask questions to the demon lord? After that, the main character fell to fifth place and wanted to answer something, but inside him everything was trembling with fear, and he couldn't even say anything. The demon lord continued to hold the hostess of the hall in his arms, and said that he still thought that leaving the second hand to the main character was too generous, and he asked him not to force the demon lord to correct this mistake. The main character looked at all this, unable to say anything, and did not understand how all this could happen, because the demon lord clearly had to die at his hands, but he managed to get ahead of him in everything. And now his abilities, his glory, and his woman, in general, everything that belonged to him at one moment disappeared, and right now he has the feeling as if he lives in the shadow of this man. The main character never found the strength to say anything, and the demon lord and the hostess of the hall simply walked past him. Passing by this guy, the demon lord looked back with the thoughts that the loss of the player's point of view is tantamount to the loss of the protagonist's luck, and although the changes in the plot are not enough to kill him instantly, in the future, he will be able to continue to destroy his fate with even greater cruelty. After this shameful incident for the so-called protagonist of this story, Hall Mistress E decided to turn to her best friend for help. Hall Mistress Ye and the Demon Lord's second apprentice decided to meditate together to calm the turmoil in their hearts. But the girl with blue hair couldn't do it. All she could think about now revolved around thoughts of the Demon Lord Inside, the girl reasoned that he was really cunning and succeeded in controlling the mental state of other people, making them obedient puppets. Yehongyi thought that even though he wanted to be her godfather, she couldn't help but think that they might get married someday. Meanwhile, the second senior student was thinking about how she didn't understand why she couldn't resist him in the immortal pool, and why her body was acting so strangely. After all, every time she thought about doing something with Hongyi, this man also appeared in her head. Because of these thoughts, which were unusual for him, the second senior student began to think that she might have even been poisoned. Suddenly, they opened their eyes at the same time and realized that they were thinking about roughly the same thing. The girls turned away and an awkward pause hung in the air. They were trying to figure out if they could still be honest with each other from today on. Meanwhile, in one sinister palace, things were only going uphill. Demon Lord. Bai Qinlin was enjoying how everything was going smoothly for him and was thinking that at the sect leader selection ceremony, he would be going up against Taoist Menghu, and it would be like a mini-boss versus a real big boss. Bai Qinlin opened his inventory, remembering that after Menghu failed to become the sect leader, there was a storyline about his revival. But even if something unexpected happened, our hero still had a card that was granted peak strength and 13 ninth-grade life-giving insects. While he was thinking about this, the system unexpectedly congratulated its owner on receiving a new main story mission. The mission's objective was to kill Taoist Menghu and spread the great love of liberation, and the reward for the mission would be the Hell King's 10 Desperate Strikes Blade, a top-class immortal weapon. Seeing this mission, Bai Qinlin wondered if there was a need to kill an old man who was already hundreds of years old, and also thought that the system was quite perverted because killing such an old man was hardly a form of great love, as was written in the notification window. However, Bai Qinlin immediately cooled his mind and became more serious. Because this was the first time that the main story mission appeared, and it was different from the original game, Bai Qinlin wondered on what basis the system determined the direction of the new story. And while he was thinking about this, a younger student appeared in his chambers greeting her master. After which, she proudly told that when the 3 confidential letters were delivered to the 3 elders, they immediately said that they would follow the teacher's instructions. The girl blushed a little and added sarcastically that she noticed a surprised expression on the face of the Taoist Menghu when he heard this news. She began to tell him that she had been watching him with the demonic eye and saw how the head of the Menhu temple approached the Supreme Nanon to find out how the conquest and the trust of the other Supremes were progressing. To which the Supreme replied that things were going very badly because, firstly, the Supreme Lo seemed to be supporting the Yulo Hall, and the 3 elders who had previously received allowances from them suddenly had all their money disappear, and the elder of the All-Ni Affairs Department, the elder of the Law Enforcement Department, Yang, and the elder of the Beast Taming Department, Tai, also began to show ambiguous attitudes. Upon hearing this news, the head of the Menghu temple smashed his teacup in anger and shouted that these bastards only seem grateful when they receive benefits from him. But at critical moments, they always turn away. However, the temple leader immediately came to his senses and said with a devilish smile that if they really pissed him off, he would raise his hand and force all his disciples to push for a change in leadership to create a new Kangming sect. The Supreme, noticing this nonsense, asked the head of the temple to be more reasonable, to which the head of the temple replied that it was impossible to be prudent in such circumstances, and at least now among the 10 supreme ones, including Nanon, there were 4 more people who supported Menhu. This means that the temple has an advantage in this battle and the place of the head of the sect will be theirs. Hearing this story, Bai Qinlin laughed and said that it was not surprising because when the heavens wanted to destroy a person, they first drove him crazy, and the 3 confidential letters were just a small trick. But Menghu could lose his mind even with such a small trick. After that, Bai Qinlin looked at the junior disciple and asked, "Isn't she interested in knowing the contents of the confidential letters?" The girl brought her legs together a little and replied that the teacher should decide for himself whether to tell her or not, adding that the younger student had no need to show unnecessary curiosity, and, compared to us, she was more interested in other things. When she finished speaking, she rushed into the arms of the Demon Lord and said that she wanted to know what reward the teacher would give her this time. However, due to her carelessness, she spilled the contents of the Demon Lord's cup onto his pants. Noticing this, the girl immediately began to say that she had been too reckless and begged for forgiveness. After that, she took a rag and, lowering herself between your teacher's legs, said that the younger student would immediately help the teacher wipe everything clean. When she started doing this, the Lord blushed and thought that this was simply incredible because the girl was already really going beyond all the boundaries of what was permitted. Bai Qinlin looked at her excited face and couldn't even tell whether she did it by accident or on purpose. It's time to move a little away from the events that take place in this castle and move to the palace of the misty cloud of the sacred land of the mystical lake of ice. There were several women sitting around the center of the lake, meditating. Suddenly, a light rain started to fall and the lake became noticeably restless. And just a second later, she stood up like a raging river. The women who were meditating looked at what was happening in surprise and asked you a question. Could someone really have come out of seclusion so early? It was simply impossible because she had just recently finished her battle with the demon lord Qinlin. It couldn't have happened so quickly. However, what they saw before them said otherwise. The saint appeared before them. After a deep sleep, her first words were about the demon lord, saying that this man was still alive. Her first order was to tell the heads of the four great Orthodox Tao sects to meet with her immediately. At that moment, a huge crowd gathered near the main altar of Wangxiang Palace. Some people shouted that they supported the master of the Menghu Temple and wanted to conquer the central lands and capture Mu Xinglan alive, while others shouted that they wanted to support the mistress of the Ye Hall. Because of this, disputes even arose in the crowd, which almost led to fights. And in the middle of this whole crowd, a modest young man appeared who asked, "Is he really the only one here who supports the owner of the temple, Baya?" As soon as he said this, they immediately looked at him like he was a leper and began to ask how he dared to support the demon lord, since the only reward for this would be a place in the blood storage. While they were arguing about all this, a chariot passed over them. People immediately recognized that this was the chariot of the mistress of the Yingui Temple, Hua. As soon as they arrived at the right place, the so-called protagonist of this story asked everyone to step aside and be silent. After that, he looked at his master and said that he had cleared the way for his mistress. The woman calmly stepped out from behind her chariot and asked where the rest of the elders were. The fake protagonist said that, in response to the hostess, the 10 elders of the main altar and the supreme elder Nanon would arrive soon. While inside, the guy was thinking that she had really ignored his outstretched hand in front of thousands of people. While he was explaining this, it was announced that the owner of the Boar Yulo and Lady Ren had arrived. They immediately looked at them and made sure that nothing had changed. The head of the temple looked at his wife and said that he of course understood everything. But he was actually the master of the Yulo temple, and managing the crew as a simple student was already too much. But the woman replied that she didn't care if something didn't suit him, and ordered him to kneel down since they had already arrived at the place. The man became scared and began to beg her to give her husband at least a little authority. But what the woman was immediately answered was that such a question as her husband, obsessed only with fame, wealth, and appearance, cannot be compared with that guy. Hearing these words, he obediently bent down and fell to his knees, so that his wife could try to get down from the chariot. In fact, it was a pleasure for him too. While the woman showed that she was the main thing in the temple of Yulo, Hua was surprised that this woman arrived so early. Meanwhile, the lady approached her place, and blushing a little, she asked, "Has the demon lord really not arrived yet?" After that, Ren looked at Hua and couldn't help but smile. She said that she noticed how the woman kept looking at the place of the master of the Bai temple, and smiling, she asked if they really had some kind of secret conspiracy. To which Hua replied that Lady Ren could only take care of trash like her husband, and she had no right to interfere in her affairs. Ren smiled and asked, "In that case, the demon lord's affairs also have nothing to do with her?" After this sentence, Hua thought for a moment and asked what Lady Ren meant. Ren immediately approached her closely and declared that after a detailed conversation with the demon lord, she had formed a close alliance with the master of the Bai temple, and therefore today, she would help him take this place. Hua's gaze immediately changed. Meanwhile, Ren's husband was confusedly thinking that his wife actually used Bai Qinlin as a topic of conversation and talked to the mistress of the Hua temple for the sake of their temple. And in his opinion, this meant that she still loved him. The women looked at each other angrily, while the head of the temple thought about how he wanted to quickly take his place. At the same time, Bai Qinlin was changing his clothes. The younger student who came into his room and asked why he decided to change his clothes. However, as soon as she saw his naked torso, she immediately began to think that her teacher's body was incredibly beautiful and perfect. In her mind, she dreamed of something that would be perfect if it belonged exclusively to a younger student. However, the girl put these thoughts aside for a while and informed her master that she had just heard the bell ring from the main altar and the selection ceremony had already begun. Bai Qinlin smiled and said that they shouldn't rush because they still lacked a trump card that would determine whether they would win or lose. After that, Bai Qinlin used the demon eyes and showed a projection. The younger looked at this in surprise and asked, "Could it be that this is senior sister Hong's subordinate from the Crimson Pig Guard?" After thinking for a moment, she asked, "Could it be that what he is rushing to bring is Kang Ming's soul sword?" To which Bai Qinlin replied that his junior disciple was right, and when the two sacred artifacts were in his hands, then he would make his move. Bai Qinlin raised his index finger and declared that this blade was incredibly cool. Meanwhile, Hua asked Ren what she told the Demon Lord, because he was clearly not the type to easily form an alliance with others. To which Ren replied that from her words, it follows that the mistress of the Hua Temple is very well acquainted with the owner of the Bai Temple. Ren involuntarily giggled and asked, "Is there really a secret romance between them?" When suddenly Menku appeared, he looked at the two women and asked, "Is it really appropriate to talk about such trifles on such an important day?" The women looked at him and simultaneously thought that he was the main problem. And when everyone finally gathered, the judge came out and said that the time had come, so everyone should take their seats. After which, she announced that the ceremony of selecting the new head of the sect was officially declared open. And according to tradition, the left protector Tantai will announce the candidates. The woman opened her scroll and announced the first participant to be the mistress of the Black Moon Hall, Ye Hongyi. The crowd immediately began to argue about the fact that the mistress of the small hall, "Don't you dare to claim the title of mistress of the sect, because even though she is a blood descendant of the family, she still shouldn't interfere." The girl heard all these words, but she didn't care. Now she was only thinking about whether the demon conqueror would come or not, and she didn't understand why it bothered her so much because they say about things like weddings and baptisms. It would be better if he broke his promise so that she could calmly hate him. The second participant, Tantai, announced the mistress of the Yingui Temple, Hua Yuron. While she was reading out these names, she thought that they understood why the Demon Lord had not yet come to participate, while at the same time she remembered that night when he made her lose control of herself. After that, with a trembling voice, she announced the owner of the Luocha Temple, the Taoist Menghu, as the third participant. The crowd immediately began to shout that he was the one worthy of being the head of the sect, because his powers were simply incredible. Looking at this, one of the elders said that this is not bad, because this guy looks like a heroic howl. Menhu looked with pleasure at the crowd that supported him and asked others how they were going to resist him. Menghu, tired of waiting, flew to Tantai, with a brazen request to eliminate the minor contenders and allow this venerable one to fight the mistress of the Hua Temple to decide the outcome, because it was obvious that one of them would become the next head of the sect. Tantai immediately warned him that as the protector of the main altar, she was forced to say that this was a violation of the rules, to which Menhu said that these rules are worth nothing, because she herself should know better than anyone how she got the position of law enforcement officer. And besides, now no one can cover for her, including her scum teacher. The man came closer to her and asked how a little girl dared to show disrespect to her elder. Tantai couldn't stand it anymore and pulled out her blade to strike him. However, Menhu took out his artifact and stopped her blade, ordering her to bow before him. He subdued her with his power and forced her body to bend. However, the girl struggled desperately, thinking that she could not bow down because it would disappoint the Demon Lord. Hua, meanwhile, decided to quietly intervene in the duel and gave her a piece of her power so that she could fight Menhu. The man immediately noticed that his precious Chori was destroyed. When he looked up the next time, he saw Hua standing in front of him and saying that it was terrible for the younger ones to run away. Right after that, the master of the Luo Hall appeared and said that he was not good enough to compare with them. However, that was why he could teach the younger one a lesson. Hongyi immediately flew up and said that Lo did not laugh at the sister protector Tantai. The situation became more and more tense. Ren became a little tense and said that Hongyi couldn't fight with a non-candidate, because if she gave in to provocation from a non-candidate, she would fall into a trap. Her husband wanted to say that he could go and advise her to do this, and then Menhu would probably make an allowance for them. However, as soon as he said this, his wife immediately hit him and called him a pathetic coward. One of the supreme leaders looked at the most important one and said that this was unacceptable, to which Nanon replied that this was entirely consistent with their demonic sect style, after which he added with a smile that the owner of the sect must be a capable guy. Hongyi, meanwhile, realized that she had already made a mistake, and even if she were to defeat the master of the Luo Hall, other opponents would immediately appear who would support Menghu. Lo looked at her opponent and asked why she was just standing there and waiting. Did she really realize that support was not on her side? The man laughed and added that it was useless even if she waited for the Demon Lord to appear, because thanks to the Taoist Menghu, who had mastered the technique of stealing souls from the Great Compassion, his strength had reached the pinnacle among the four temple's masters. The man also added that the Demon Lord had most likely become a cripple long ago because of Saint Mu Yi, which is why he did not dare to show up at the Sect Master Selection ceremony. Luo didn't stop and said that the Demon Lord was just a dog's ass, and if he had any courage he should kill Luo right now. But that didn't happen. However, as soon as Luo finished speaking, he noticed a strange aura, and his body was immediately struck by an incredible attack. Bai Qinlin, the Demon Lord, slowly walked up to the altar, saying that the ants had no right to decide who would become the head of the sect. Everyone immediately made a way for him, and he continued to talk about how he supported the hostess of the hall, Ye Hongyi, in taking the position of head of the hall. After finishing his speech, Bai Qinlin looked at everyone else with a smirk and asked, "Does anyone have any objections?" The younger disciple took a few steps forward and said that when Temple Lord Yulo arrived for the ceremony, it would start again. After that, she bowed politely and said that her master should quickly take the stage. The second student was glad that the Demon Lord had finally appeared at the very last moment. Looking at him, her thoughts were overwhelmed by the strangest ideas. However, as usual, she thought that since the younger one was bewitched and the older one was bound by an evil rune, she should not succumb to its influence again. Hongyi, embarrassed, was the first to approach the Demon Lord and greet him, to which he replied that she had done a good job while he was away. The girl involuntarily bowed to him, and Bai Qinlin said that she could leave everything else to him. After that, he began to approach his second student, causing her body to begin to tremble, and between the legs it became hotter and hotter. The girl couldn't stand his gaze, so she looked away. Looking at his second disciple, Bai Qinlin said that he saw everything that just happened. After that, he turned his gaze to Manhwa and said that the students of his temple should not be disgraced. Manhwa, meanwhile, looked angrily at her opponent, and the system notified the Demon Lord that he was able to successfully use Great Love and make a critical hit. Let's go back a little, and Bai Qinlin was sitting on the sofa and reasoning about how Menghu was currently the true revered incarnation of a deity, and in order to complete the mission of destroying him, Bai Qinlin must use some items. After looking at the system, Bai Qinlin noticed that Great Love points were not easy to obtain, so he wondered if the system had any recommendations. To which the system immediately responded and said that it had selected a random recommendation for our hero, which was a gift set of poisonous insects with a 20% discount, for a total of only 4,000 points, and then Bai Qinlin would be able to randomly receive 3 types of poisonous insects that have great practical value. Bai Qinlin said that it was just in time because it unexpectedly happened that he had practiced the poisonous insect technique on Xiao Chen's brother, and that was what was needed. The system opened the set and said that the first type of insects due to the system gift set is the mantis with sharpness. It can accumulate a blow below the stage and immortality and quietly activate it in front of the enemy. For those who didn't understand, it was this insect that just killed Lo with one move, and for outsiders, it could only be a magical technique developed by someone from the realm of immortality or higher. Bai Qinlin thought that he absolutely had to make everyone believe that he had already returned to the pinnacle of the immortal realm. After all, only then can this grandiose show be played out according to his script. The second insect species in the gift set is the Phantom Thunder Cicada, which can move with the force of a heavenly calamity. Elder Nanon looked at all this and could not understand what kind of technique this was because he had never seen such a thing before, even when Bai Qinlin was at the peak of his power. Bai Qinlin walked up to the top officials and said that he didn't like to waste time, so it was better to sort things out right away. Let the high-ranking officials who were higher in rank than the master of the hall vote for the sect leader, while the rest of the court crowd walked away. Menhu immediately realized that this was clearly aimed at his supporters, to which the elder replied that the effect leader must be chosen extremely carefully and that the temple mistress Hua had not said anything yet. Menhu was pleased with this turn of events and said that it would be better if they sorted things out with each other first. Bai Qinlin quietly said that his younger sister should know very well that no one can bully Bai Qinlin's younger sister, to which Hua replied that his younger sister had long been dead, and the person standing in front of him was the holy nun Hua. However, the woman understood where this was all heading, and she had to choose the lesser of two evils. The woman looked at the elders and said that she agreed to follow Lord Bai's proposal, and moreover, she refused to participate in the election of the head of the sect. Bai Qinlin approached his rightful place, and he noticed that Xiao Chen, who was next to Hua Yurong, had disappeared. It seems he knows very well that they should play no role in this. Upon learning this, Bai Qinlin was overjoyed because he realized that he was now the only opponent on the stage. This is a sick idiot, Menhu. Menhu, looking at the Demon Lord, asked him why he was now coming and blocking his way if they had never had any disagreements. Bai Qinlin looked at him in surprise and said that there were actually disagreements. This dog Luo had just publicly insulted the demon lord. Meng Hu activated his power and said that if Bai Qinlin wanted to play, then they would do it until the end. To which our hero responded that if he wants to play, then let him go and play. Why disgrace himself and flaunt his anger? After saying these words, Meng Hu became even more mad and said that Bai Qinlin would regret these words. To which Bai Qinlin replied that he hoped that later, this guy could be as arrogant as he was now, but noted that this was unlikely to happen unless he lost his mind. Inside, Bai Qinlin was thinking that this guy had come here with the express purpose of becoming the head of the sect, and the worst outcome he expected was that the opponents would simply unite and create a new faction in power. After that, Bai Qinlin summoned some mysterious insects and thought that he had never intended to give him any chance to survive from the beginning. After some time, the Demon Lord's second disciple announced that the vote counting had been completed and the votes of the 10 Supreme Elders would be announced first according to their seniority. After waiting for a few minutes, the girl announced that 6 of them supported the Mistress of the E-Hall and 4 of them supported the Lord of the Manhua Temple. Manhua immediately replied that this was not surprising given that the 5 Supreme Flights had the surname Ai, but he immediately asked them not to rejoice too early. Hongyi was thinking about whether she could really use this method to rise to the position of Sect Lord, and whether she should fulfill her promise to marry him, and whether she would accept Lixin, her friend, as her lord's wife. Unexpectedly, Bai Qinlin noticed that she was somehow too nervous and said that the girl did not need to worry because today was clearly her day and she would definitely become the next head of the sect. And all she needed was to just show her strength and not let his support be sold for nothing. The second disciple continued to read out the election results and announced that out of the 23 elders of the main altar, 13 supported the hostess of the Hall E, and 10 supported the host of the guard Manhua. Hearing these words, he almost lost consciousness and asked her to redo the election results. The girl began to repeat them, and he immediately began to think about the fact that he initially assumed that in this round he would have an advantage of 7 votes, but 5 elders unexpectedly betrayed him. And judging by the number of votes, even if all the other lords voted for him, he would no longer be able to win. Manhua looked at the demon lord and thought that this scoundrel had falsified the election results. Suddenly, the supreme elder stood up from his seat and asked the second disciple of the demon lord to stop, as she had missed the voices of the temple masters. He approached Manhua and said that even though many temple lords participate in these elections and are automatically considered ineligible to vote, they still cannot leave out any temple lord who has that right. So the man announces that the temple lord Shu Loren is voting for the temple master Manhua. The crowd immediately began to argue. Because people did not understand what was going on, because temple lord Shu Luo was in fact Master Ye's uncle, some said that he was giving preference to outsiders rather than his own family, or was trying to create the appearance of promoting the worthy and avoiding nepotism. However, everyone agreed that Temple Lord Manhua now had a chance to turn the situation in his favor. As soon as Ren heard this, she immediately kicked her husband. And then she made a few more strong blows and stepped on his head. The lady stood up from her seat and apologized for her husband making the wrong decision. Ren announced with a smile that both publicly and privately, the only person he supported was the Black Moon Hall's Mistress Ye. Mr. Ren raised his head slightly and said that he just wanted to go against Bai. However, immediately after this, his wife hit his head on the ground with all her might. After that, she loosened her leg a little and asked what was his decision now. The man began to say that his wife was right about everything, and the supreme leader seemed to have made a mistake that he must immediately correct. After saying these words, Ren looked at the demon lord and winked at him. Bai Qinlin picked up the guy and said that it turns out that she is really good at understanding the situation. Meanwhile, Manhua's face was distorted with anger. Through clenched teeth, he said that he gave up. However, he immediately became furious and pointed his finger at the altar, saying that all these years he had done so much for the sect and brought so much benefit to everyone, and they all speak very beautifully when they want to get benefits. But the critical moment strikes in the back. Therefore, they are all unworthy of sitting at the very top. Nanan looked at Manhua and said that when he says things like that, he makes life difficult for everyone. To which Manhua replied that then they don't have to do that. It won't complicate things. The man laughed and said that if Ye Hongyi could become the head of the sect, then he would also watch and announce that he was going to become the second head of the sect. Hearing these words, Bai Qinlin laughed and said that he was going to split the sect and destroy its foundations with such words. And now that he had said this, he could not leave this palace. Bai Qinlin said that in order for Manhua to be convinced of his wrongness, It would be enough for him to look at the face of Supreme Nano, because perhaps now even he is not on his side. The Supreme Commander remained silent after these words, and Manhwa pointed his finger at the Demon Lord, calling him truly vile and shameless, after which he activated his power and said that in that case, good luck to him, along with himself to certain death. Hua immediately said that the younger ones should leave because they cannot handle this demonic technique, and as soon as it starts, it will capture all the souls and immediately get the flesh and blood of thousands of people. However, the Demon Lord calmly stood up and said that there was no reason to panic, as it was just the chatter of a corpse. Hearing this, Menghu said that Bai Qinlan was simply crazy because once his demonic technique was ready, he would die in the blink of an eye. However, Bai Qinlan raised his finger and showed a strange red bug. The Demon Lord explained that it was a type of poisonous insect that looked unmistakable and even harmless to ordinary people. They did not feed on flesh and blood. They only fed on the external manifestation of demonic techniques. Minghu's face changed, and Bai Qinlan continued to explain that the stronger the demonic technique, the more the insect enjoys using it, and the more it eats, the stronger it becomes. Taking a closer look, Menghu saw that he was surrounded by these insects. Bai Qinlan meanwhile smiled evilly and said that they could make a bet to see which was stronger, Menghu's demonic technique or his body at the peak of immortality. After which, Bai Qinlan clenched his fist. This activated the ability of his insects, tearing apart his heart. Bai Qinlan looked at the huge hole in Menghu's body and suggested that he at least hold out for a little while longer and let them make a bet. After this, the Demon Lord added that, in his opinion, they could now move on to the next bet, and suggested betting on how long he would live after such an injury. Menghu, who couldn't believe what just happened, shouted that it was simply impossible, and asked how such a useless poisoning technique could kill an expert who was at the peak of divine transformation. Without waiting for an answer, he used all his strength and said that the body is just a decoration, and the useless ants will never understand this in their lives. Hua instantly understood that he wanted to use his own body to fuel his demonic technique. He steals souls with great sorrow and feeds them with demons, thereby transforming his body into the demonic spiritual body of great sorrow. Everyone who watched this was delighted because, for the first time in their lives, they saw a demonic ancestor in front of them. Menghu, after the transformation, laughed and said that the devilish delusional technique was not capable of killing him, and the demonic spiritual body of this honorable one was simply invincible. As soon as he said this, he began to absorb the souls of ordinary people and say that now no one will stop him from absorbing the souls of ordinary people. To him, all these people were just ordinary ants. The women who observed this said that even the residual power of this demon is quite tangible to let down the heart and mind, and if he attacks them, they will not have the opportunity to give in to sweat. The Supreme Elder, looking at all this, said that in such a situation he would openly deal with his students, and that this was already too much. The giant slowly approached the Demon Lord and said that now he would not be able to escape from here. Seeing this performance, Bai Qinlan only laughed and ordered his junior disciple to use the talisman sword. The younger student immediately carried out her master's order, and she sent this talisman flying. The giant laughed and said that the power of your talisman usually could not kill him. He kept shouting that it was simply useless because simple weapons were useless against his demonic spiritual body. After that, he prepared to attack and said that now the Demon Lord would give his life. Bai Qinlan, when I took the talisman and transformed his blade, said that although an ordinary sword was not capable of harming him, but this one could. Menghu immediately began to remember that when the Demon Lord arrived here, he had an inconspicuous sword with him, and perhaps some secrets were hidden behind it. Bai Qinlan meanwhile swung his blade and said that his demonic spirit body could not resist any more than his physical body. After that, he put in enough strength and swung his blade again towards his opponent. Menghu wanted to shout that it was simply impossible. However, he didn't have time to do anything, and the entire arena was struck by black lightning. Menghu was burning in this energy and screaming that he could not believe that there was a force that could resist the demonic spiritual body. Bai Qinlan said that this blade was prepared especially for him, but by the time he realized this, it was already too late. After Menghu evaporated, Bai Qinlan thought that, as expected from the Soul Sword and this strengthening talisman, the risky journey was not in vain, and this is a real triumph in this show. After that, Bai Qinlan hid the blade and looked at the common people and said that as everyone could see, the venerable Menghu acknowledged the election results and ascended to heaven with satisfaction. Therefore, now the hostess of the hall Yedu is the next ruler of the sect appointed by heaven. As soon as Bai Qinlan said this, the girl asked everyone for a moment of attention. Bai Qinlin looked at her, a little surprised, and she immediately fell to her knees in front of him, saying that the mistress of the Kang Ming sect, Ye Hongyi, greets her godfather. The younger student was very surprised when she heard these words, and the second student of the Demon Lord could not believe that her friend had decided to do such a thing. She immediately began to think that the Demon Lord most likely used some kind of soul-enchanting poison and that this demon really deserved to be cut into pieces. Bai Qinlin didn't even look at her and asked, "Has she already made the right decision?" To which the girl replied that everything would be in accordance with the wishes of her grandfather, and Hongyi would henceforth treat the Temple Lord Bayu as her own father. Bai Qinlin walked a little closer to her and said that this sounded very promising. Bai Qinlin also added that her grandfather's things would be returned to her. When the Ascended One saw this, he immediately rose to his feet and asked how the Demon Lord ended up with Kang Ming's soul ring, since it was a symbol of the sect leader's power. To which Bai Qinlin replied that he was simply fulfilling his promise, after which he took the girl's hand and prepared to put the ring on it. Having completed this ritual, he congratulated the girl on the fact that she had now become the head of the sect. After this, he dropped to one knee and acknowledged her as the true head of the sect. The girl wanted to answer something, but she could only sigh involuntarily. However, having collected her thoughts, she took his hand, and standing up, she raised his hand up, proclaiming that from today on, she would become the head of the sect, and Demon Lord Bai Qinlin would become her godfather, and they would work together to make the sect great again. The entire crowd immediately bowed their heads before the new sect. Bai Qinlin thought about it and thought that when he gave her the ring, there was a slightly inappropriate feeling that it was like a Western-style wedding, and the words she just said clearly had a Western-style political feeling to them. After that, Bai Qinlin suddenly found his junior disciple and the crowd behind him with his gaze. The younger student was clearly nervous and asked herself why her master was like this with this girl, and why she was not the person who was now standing next to the teacher. Suddenly, Elder Nanan asked everyone to wait and said that he did not agree with this. Bai Qinlin became the one who would of course go on stage because Menghu was just a clown on stage. And this man is a real representative of the opposition. The man quietly said that today, the mistress of Hall E had risen to the position of head of the sect as expected with an overwhelming advantage, and he would not deny this fact. However, as soon as he said this, he pointed his index finger at our hero and said that this man could not be allowed to monopolize power and act as the so-called godfather, because for thousands of years in their sect, there was only one person worthy of being called the godfather, so Bai Qinlin had no right to claim this title. Bai Qinlin looked at the head of all you and asked what she thought about this. The girl looked at the Demon Lord with embarrassment, after which she blushed a little and cleared her throat. Gathering her confidence, she stepped forward and said that if there was already a precedent like this, then Bai Qinlin could also become a godfather, after which she looked at the Supreme and asked, "Does he really want to rise in price to Menghu and experience the character of the Demon Lord on his own skin?" To which the Supreme Leader said that Bai Qinlin had recklessly killed Luo and Menghu, two high-ranking members of the Kan Ming sect, and if such behavior went unpunished, chaos would break out, and the sect leader must give an explanation to the entire sect. Hearing these words, Hongyi looked at the Demon Lord with uncertainty. However, he just smiled and asked her to relax. After that, Bai Qinlin raised his blade and said that he could not assert himself with explanations, because the Supreme One was not worthy of hearing them, and the power of the Demon Lord was attested by heaven and earth. After that, Bai Qinlin threw the blade at the Supreme's feet. The Supreme took hold of this blade and said that this was the very sword that Bai Qinlin had just used. Taking it, he asked, "Could this be the same blade that was lost many years ago, the soul sword of Kang Ming?" The Supreme carefully took this blade and said that the ancient teachings of the sect say that whoever owns both sacred artifacts has the right to act independently and execute traitors. And if this is true, then the Demon Lord really did have the authority. Bai Qinlin approached the Supreme and said, "Does he doubt that the Supreme will lie now and say that this is a fake?" Immediately after this, the Master's junior disciple approached her teacher and said that the Supreme One did not dare to slander her teacher, and this issue could not be resolved just like that. However, the Demon Lord took her latch and said that she did not have to say anything else because the Supreme One had already understood everything. Bai Qinlin turned around and added that he had to leave, leaving everyone behind him in complete confusion. The second student couldn't understand why he was so close to the younger one. Was he really closing in on something evil again, and why wasn't he close to her and his sister Lisu? Hona noticed the confusion on the second disciple's face and thought that this Bai Qinlin was still as good at playing with women's hearts as before. Ren, meanwhile, said that it seemed like from now on, Yuluo Temple would replace Luocha Temple as the #1 power in the sect, and for the sake of their temple, they would have to act with Master Bai in the future. Her husband smiled and asked, "What do you mean?" She said they should interact more, but she didn't deign to answer him. Returning home, Bai Qinlan received a notification from the system that I said congratulated his master on completing the main story mission, and the rewards received were 10 desperate Yama strikes and 3,000 points earned. Fast forward a bit. That same evening, the Temple of Sulo, a belvedere for collecting stars. Inside sat Mrs. Ren, resting after a hard and eventful day. He looked at her and thought that his wife was the most beautiful on all 9 continents, and even Mu Xinlan was not able to compete with them. Because as they say, a woman decorates herself for the one she loves, and perhaps this evening, his wife would want to have a little fun. Suddenly, they all heard the voice of the Demon Lord saying that the dangerous tower was 100 feet tall and they could pluck the stars from the sky. So the lady definitely has a romantic streak. Chapter: Why did the Demon Lord come here at such a late hour, to which his wife asked him to go and help the Demon Lord enter the temple? The man asked with tears in his eyes. Does his wife really want him to call the Demon Lord and help him? However, Bai Qinlan calmly walked inside and said that he thanked Madam for her good intentions. However, the restrictions of the gazebo where the stars gather were unable to stop him. Entering inside, Bai Qinlan looked at the head of the temple and said that such a disciplined person as Lord Ren had nothing more to worry about, and he could leave here and leave them alone because he needed to discuss something with his wife. After these words, the head of the temple became even more angry. He took out his blade and said that today Bai Qinlan had crossed the line, so Bai Qinlan would feel the blade of this temple and all the humiliation. However, suddenly his wife stood between them and said, "Does her husband really want to die?" The man immediately fell to his knees and said that it was all because of him, and he was just trying to protect her honor. The woman looked down at him and ordered him to get out, and added that no matter what sounds he heard later, he was forbidden to enter. The man tried to dispute her words but did not find the strength to do so. So as soon as he was outside, he began to listen carefully to what was happening inside. Meanwhile, the lady offered tea to the Demon Lord, to which he replied that she was too kind. However, he took the cup. After taking a sip, he thought that he remembered this part of the plot. Han escaped from Ji Taimei of the He Sect, but she could not escape the poison of passion that Ji planted deep within her. After assessing her body, Bai Qinlan thought that tonight was the last period of active action of the poison of passion, and the original game really was a dating game full of such plots. The girl moved a little closer and said that this was tea from the demon pet shelter and should be very delicious. And also for a woman like her, it was a great honor that Demon Lord Bai Qinlan agreed to try it. She poured some more tea and said that the Lord of the Temple Bai Qinlan was no longer young but not yet married, and if he had a housewife who knew how to cook a delicious dish and brew alcoholic tea elixirs, it would be ideal. Bai Qinlan turned away slightly and asked her to quickly get down to business and explain why she invited him here. The girl thought that this guy was very shy, perhaps because of her. After that, she threw one of her legs over him and asked who was more beautiful, she or the queen of the Hua Temple. Our hero's face changed and he asked why she mentioned the ruler of the Hua Temple, to which Ren asked a question in return. She asked the Temple Lord, is he asking because he already knows the answer, or is this a technique he uses to manipulate women? Bai Qinlan didn't answer and she grabbed her tights and asked if Bai Qinlan knew where these stockings came from. Bai Qinlan replied that he knew very well that they were made of heavenly silk and could protect against evil, and also added that his student also liked to wear them, but she preferred the white ones. The hostess unceremoniously sat on his hands and asked, "Does he really like this?" She opened up and thought about the fact that if he says that he doesn't like it, then it will definitely be a lie. And as for the original owner of this body, then this may not be so. He smiled dirty when he thought that the real Bai Qinlan would say that Han had not done enough to please him. Suddenly, the security guard asked why Bai Qinlan still hadn't remembered everything that happened between them. At the same time, she lowered his hand lower, and she shouted that it was he who gave her this heavenly silk. Suddenly, memories flashed before our hero. He remembered how he sat opposite a woman who said that if he still needed living souls to turn Tatai into a doll for pleasure, then he could use one of his candidates. The girl ordered them to go into the room and told the Demon Lord that of course they didn't know the truth, and they thought that she was sending them to become his servants. The first of them was a slightly plump weapon girl who said that the Demon Lord should choose her because, as long as she was in his sight, she would give him pleasure forever. The younger one coquettishly bit her finger and said that she was very good at keeping secrets and everyone blamed her for being able to keep her mouth shut. The middle one immediately fell to her knees and said that she wanted him to choose her because she could do anything and would do anything. However, Bai Qinlin ignored these three, and he looked away into the corner of the room, where stood a shy girl named Yun Jinger. The mistress of these women said that Bai Qinlin has a keen eye because the girl he's looking at has an immortal body in general. By the way, she is really an ideal material. After that, the mistress asked, does he really want to choose her? However, Bai Qinlin replied that he was just thinking about some boring things, and he didn't care at all. After that, he stood up and took the silk material. Approaching this girl, he gave it to her and told her to take good care of herself. The girl took the stockings and looked down humbly. However, now she was hugging our hero and talking about how he was a real villain because he made her remember the Demon Lord all these years, and she wants him to take responsibility for this. She sat on his lap and said that many saints served him that day, but his gaze was always fixed on her. However, in the end, he still chose not her. So why? Bai Qinlin briefly replied that her poison was starting to work. He ran his hand over her legs and said that this is from the passion of the desire flower, the mysterious poison Huan. And although she was able to escape because of the sect, however, she could not escape from it. As soon as he touched her, her whole body was pierced by a mad desire, because of which she hugged him very tightly and pressed her whole body against him. Bai Qinlin said, with a straight face, that at that time, the choice was actually limited to choosing sacrificial materials, and although she was the most suitable person, she reminded him of his difficult situation in his early years. With his unusual physique, Bai Qinlin was deceived by the villains and ultimately became the living catalyst for their fabrications. After these words, Bai Qinlin sat her down and said that he felt sorry for her and also felt sorry for himself, and that he was indebted to her for the ceremony of choosing the head of the sect. And today, he came to repay her by helping remove the poison. At these words, the girl blushed and called him by his name, however, very softly, as a loving girl calls him. Meanwhile, her husband stood behind the door and could not understand what they were doing there. Suddenly, I was thrown back against the door and thereby hit him on the head. As soon as the man saw our hero, he asked what he had done with his wife and why he had gone out alone without her. When he looked at his hand, he noticed that it was covered in some kind of slime. The worst-case scenario immediately flashed through his mind. Bai Qinlin noticed his gaze and raised his hand, saying, "This is a poisonous liquid, and his wife has been poisoned all along. If her husband wasn't useless, then the demon slayer wouldn't have had to do this alone." Bai Qinlin rose into the air and ordered him to become a better person and hold his head up high to live up to his status as the master of the temple, at least for the sake of his wife, and not let her suffer. As he flew away, Bai Qinlin thought that his debt to her was partial, but at the moment he had no way to repay everything for Hua, because between him and his sister, there are some secrets that were not disclosed in his previous life in the game. And even if the original owner of this body was Bai Qinlin, he no longer remembers anything because he separated and saved his main body. And it turns out that the relevant information should be buried in the heart of the main body, and the heart is currently stored in the Fire Demon Tower. Therefore, Bai Qinlin decided to go to the Fire Demon Tower for the sake of memories, and also to regain the peerless power of the Demon Lord. Meanwhile, Xiaochen stood at the edge of the mountain, shouting the names of the Demon Lord's disciples, saying that they were all short-sighted women and one day he would make them all pay for this and show them who the real heavenly chosen one was. Suddenly, a strange teacher appeared behind him and said that his student was too nervous and everyone had a chance to change. The guy looked at his teacher and he realized that he had again plunged his consciousness into something very strange. Meanwhile, the teacher said that Ye Hongyi had taken over as the head of the sect and Bai Qinlin had become the godfather of Kang Ming. And although Chen's assassination attempt and manipulation had failed, Saint Mu had already guessed that it was not his fault. The teacher also said that the saint announced that the Third Holy War against the demonic path was inevitable, and he would have a chance to kill the main body of the Demon Lord. But for this, she needed a heavenly chosen one. The surprised guy asked what she meant and how, in her opinion, he could kill the Demon Lord. The teacher immediately began to explain that one of the 4 forbidden zones of the great demonic source of this sect is the Fire Demon Tower, and in this place is located part of the main source of our hero's body. Upon hearing this information, the disciple decided that the saint still wanted to use him as a pawn. However, he wondered why the Demon Lord needed to destroy his perfect, formless demonic body. After all, on that day when the saintess fought with the Demon Lord, she discovered that his formless demonic body was incomplete, and in the end, Bai Qinlin relied on the source of his body hidden elsewhere to successfully guide his elusive divine soul to the safe place. The teacher continued to say that at that time, the demon lord's divine soul was fragile, so the saint invaded his consciousness and saw his inner weakness. And the demon lord's weak point was this girl and the ancient tower. The teacher said that it was impossible to establish the girl's identity. The sign on the ancient tower indicates that it is the tower of the fire demon. Hearing this information, the disciple was delighted and said that perhaps the main organs of the main source of the demon lord should be in the fire demon tower, and the key of the fire demon is in the hands of the sect leader Kang Ming and the supreme elder, which is why he supported her in becoming the head of the sect. However, as soon as he said this, he began to fade away because he did not understand what the point of all this was. After all, they could not spend the fire demon tower. To which the teacher said that the student should not forget that the enemy of your enemy is your friend. And Bai Qianlin offered her to become the head of the sect, but at the same time, the Supreme One is very unhappy with this fact, and perhaps he is the key to defeating the Demon Lord. The next morning, the second disciple of the Demon Lord met with the new head of the sect and congratulated her on the fact that from today on, she officially took over this post, and she also officially handed over these confidential records to her as a protector. The new head of the sect said that her friend should know how much she hated these boring things, so it would be better to do as last time, and Tantai would take care of the little things while they discussed more important matters together. However, unexpectedly, the second disciple of the Demon Lord said that she would not dare to overstep her authority, and the head of the sect could find his godfather to settle all matters. The girl took her friend's hand and asked, "Is she angry that Hongi allied herself with the Demon Lord?" Without waiting for an answer, she said that this was her grandfather's last wish, which she was obliged to fulfill. The second student looked at her friend with a little surprise and asked, "What did the old ancestor say?" The head of the sect immediately blushed and said that her grandfather wanted her and the ruler to become a real couple. Upon hearing this news, the Demon Lord's second disciple almost fainted. The head of the sect tried to calm his friend down and said that she had already thought through everything, and if she really did become with this man's wife, it would definitely not affect the relationship between them. The girl continued to say that they could talk about their own affairs and she would call her friend's sister and she would call the head the same. When she said this, the second disciple of the Demon Lord could no longer bear it and completely lost consciousness. Let's go back to the Demon Lord's past. He sat with his sister who made the first bow not to the ground, an action that every Chinese couple must perform during their wedding. The first bow not to the ground, the second to the parents, the third to each other. The girl looked at her brother, offended, and asked why he didn't bow with her. To which he replied that it was just a game, you were creative, and his younger sister shouldn't be so serious. She immediately started crying and saying that he was a fool. It was Bai Qianlin who tried to calm her down. However, he would have nothing, and he decided to say that he would do as she said. The younger sister immediately wiped away her tears and began to beam with happiness, and they made two bows together. After this, she took him by the hands and sat down opposite him, saying that it was time for husband and wife to bow to each other. However, when they bowed, they hit their foreheads. When Bai Qianlin woke up, he grabbed his head because of an unexpected migraine. Looking to the left, he saw someone's leg next to him. It was his youngest student who was talking in her sleep about wanting to become his dog. Bai Qianlin woke her up with his voice and asked who allowed her to step on his head. After thinking for a moment, he added that he was becoming more and more arrogant. The younger student apologized and said that in fact Sister Tantai sent that she wanted to meet with the teacher. However, he became so, she decided to wait. However, he accidentally fell asleep. Bai Qianlin replied that he would meet her outside and prepared to get dressed. After some time, they met in the temple. Hongi watched this and thought that the second disciple of the Demon Lord probably decided to retreat from the fight because of her. Or perhaps she became so disillusioned that she decided to return to serve her teacher. She was very nervous and did not understand what they were talking about because she had poor hearing. Meanwhile, the second student began to take off her clothes and beg the teacher to stop mentally manipulating Hongyi. The second student thought for a moment and said that she knew that the purpose of her existence was to become an object of sacrifice, and was willing to sacrifice herself in exchange for the teacher releasing Hongyi. Continues to take off her clothes. She said that the teacher can come to her and do whatever he wants and there is no need to feel sorry for her just because she is his student. Suddenly, the head of the sect, who came closer, froze in surprise and could not believe what she saw in front of her. The second disciple of the Demon Lord immediately approached her friend and began to say that this was not what she thought. However, the head of the sect said that she felt that she had come at the wrong time. Bai Qianlin smiled and said that she came just in time. He hugged the girls and said that next to him was his student and goddaughter, so together they were one big warm family. and the family must join forces to conquer the demonic path and rule the Central Plains. The girls looked at him in surprise after these words. Bai Qinlan looked at his goddaughter and said that he had applied for the key to the demon-blazing tower. So he was wondering if there was a response. Inside, he was thinking that, judging from the original game, after the sect leader came to power, it was very easy to apply to the Supreme Ones for the key. The girl explained that she had told the Supreme Elders about this. However, the Supreme Elder changed the subject and suggested opening the Fire Demon Tower as a testing ground for the disciples to suppress the rebirth of the ferocious beasts and evil spirits within it. Bai Qinlan smiled and said that this guy just wanted to intimidate him and thought that he only had 3 disciples, so he wanted to use tens of thousands of other disciples. The second disciple of the Demon Lord said that since the elder sister is not around, she is afraid that the younger sister will not be able to dominate the other disciples of the same generation, and even Xiao Chen is half a step away from forming a core. Just then, Bai Qinlan suddenly reminded her that she was actually part of his temple, so she would also have to take the test. He didn't wait for an answer from her and turned around and said that he understood that her lineage was noble, and her ambitions were simply enormous, and she was not at all like Singer, who was ready to give everything to serve her master. Therefore, Bai Qinlan silently left from there, and he began to think that perhaps the previous misunderstandings were still unresolved, and he still needed to stick to the strategy of spreading great love, and there should be no failures. The second student, meanwhile, was watching this and wanted to say something, but she couldn't. After he left, she hid her face, which was red with shame, and asked her friend if he had just given up something from her, since she could clearly live up to his expectations. The head of the sect took her friend's hands and said that in the end, this was her teacher, and her lack of determination probably upset him a lot. However, the second student said with tears in her eyes that she was very disappointed in her sister. After all, they created a mirror flower seal. However, now she stands next to this man and scolds her sister, whom she should have trusted forever. Suddenly, the head of the sect got angry and said that they swore to never allow a man to touch them. But just now, the second disciple undressed right in front of her godfather. Immediately after that, she turned around and started to leave. The second student asked where she was going, to which the girl replied that since her friend was the first to break her oath, she should not blame her for not holding back, and she started her fiancé and would have sex with him this very evening in this temple. Hearing this, it was as if she was struck by lightning. However, she immediately pulled herself together and said that we are there. They are acting in a fit of anger. She should still be the first instead of the head. Meanwhile, the younger student was in front of her master. She had an artifact in her hands and she gave it orders to obey. When the ritual was over, she noticed that this demonic misty cauldron was just perfect for her spirit body that controlled ghosts. And immediately, a huge spiritual ghost appeared from it. She couldn't believe that it could be used to summon such a powerful spirit. And after that, she approached her master and asked why her teacher suddenly taught the younger one this combat technique today. In fact, she wanted to receive a completely different reward. To which she closed the answer that it was all because of the second student, who turned out to be too independent and in preparation for the upcoming tests of the Fire Demon Tower and the main enemy. The entire temple urgently needs to become stronger. Bai Qinlan stood up and explained that the fighting technique she learned today actually made her much stronger. After that, he took the blade in his hands. And having cut this spirit in half, he reminded her that true power must be limitless. Seeing how her teacher defeated the spirit with one blow, her whole body tensed up with excitement. Bai Qinlan held this blade in his hands and thought that this was the reward for killing Menghu, chosen by the workshop during the ceremony, 10 desperate strikes. And it is truly worthy of being an item of great rarity, because even the weakest initial strike has incredible, enormous power. However, Bai Qinlan put these thoughts aside. Because now, the main problem is different. The plot of the Fire Demon Tower is different from the original, and it must be a conspiracy between 2 obvious enemies. Bai Qinlan, taking hold of his blade, asked himself why they always treated him with such hatred, because he thought that they lacked great love, and once the trials of the Fire Demon Tower began, he would definitely instill great love in them. After a few days, the preparations were completed. The Supreme announced that today the Fire Demon Tower would be opened as a testing ground, and the winner would be allowed to take any demonic energy or evil soul treasures from the tower. The disciples of the Manhua Temple prepared to use this day to restore the glory of the great Manhua Temple. However, some asked them to remain silent and said that they needed to first choose a new head of the temple, and that elder brother Xiao Chen was the strongest candidate. His mistress asked him if he remembered what was required of him from this test, to which he replied that he would definitely come first. and if he failed, he would cut off another hand. The mistress of the temple said that strange objects that were not treasures should be given to her, and he should not open them himself. He immediately bowed and said that he would keep this in mind. However, inside he thought that he would definitely arrange a surprise for everyone. Ren called his best disciple, and he said that he would definitely live up to his title as a senior disciple. Looking at these two, she thought that nothing else could be expected from them, because they were both born without reproductive organs. Because she knew that before the Demon Lord left that day, they had worked out a plan together, and together they would gain more than just the sect leader selection ceremony. I looked at this woman and thought that she was really becoming bolder, and therefore her future was becoming brighter. However, he suddenly noticed the heavy gazes of his younger sister and her student. Bai Qinlan called his disciple and said that he had prepared something special for her. He gave her a strange talisman and said that it was a cloned ghost insect and that it just needed to be allowed to open at a critical moment and her teacher would be able to lend a helping hand. The girl then hugged her teacher and thanked him for such a gift. Finally, the second disciple of the Demon Lord announced that it was time, and according to the tradition of the sect's trial, the order of entry into the tower would be determined based on the candle extinguishing competition. There will be a row of 20 eternal candles with spiritual energy, and techniques and objects will be prohibited. The first to enter will be the one who can extinguish the most candles using pure energy. The Demon Lord's junior disciple will be the first to try it. The Supreme One said that this is very good and followers of the demonic path should be like this, not afraid to make the first shot. As soon as she approached these candles, she called her stupid ghost to help her put out the candles, and she managed to put out as many as 15 things. The Supreme thought that this was really impressive and Xiaoqian had to show better results. After this, the fake hero of this story began to come out and say that he was now going to break this record. He laughed and thought that now Bai Qinlan would regret that he had crossed the path of the one chosen by heaven. He swung and delivered his blow into the air. The Supreme immediately walked up to the table with a happy face and announced that this guy was able to extinguish 17 things, and this is the highest figure among the disciples who are lower than the Lords of the Hall in the entire history of the sect. Smiling, he said that most likely the first place had already been determined, but he still needed to ask if anyone objected. The boy hid his blade and thanked them for letting him win. The younger student apologized to her master for losing, to which he replied that everything was fine. Meanwhile, the second student was tormented by doubts. She remembered the words of her former teacher, and unable to withstand such tension, I asked everyone to wait a few minutes. After that, she took a few steps forward and announced that she was also taking part in the test. In the crowd, satisfied people immediately appeared and said that she was now, in fact, a protector, and by doing so, she would lower her status. The Supreme looked at the girl and said that this could violate the rules because she is the defender of the sect and one of the organizers of this process. Bai Qinlan thought that this was really surprising and perhaps she still hated him and wanted him to fail. He noticed that she was looking straight at him, and I thought that he was most likely right because he saw intentions in her eyes. The sect leader couldn't believe that her sister was actually trying to show off in front of this man. All the other day, when she had been talking frankly with her teacher, it all looked like they were lovers. Having become convinced of this, she decided that there was no longer any point in keeping the oath of the mirror flower. Therefore, she stood up and declared that the protector could be the protector of the sect. However, she is also a disciple of the Yuluo Temple who was raised by Bai Qinlan, so her words and actions are a display of respect for her master. The second student could not believe that her sister, following in the footsteps of the younger student, was also completely bewitched by this man. The Supreme One said that since the head of the sect had spoken, he would be made a witness to the abilities of the protector Tantai. Xiao pointed his finger at this girl and said that going against him was her greatest tragedy, and also said that extinguishing 17 candles with one swing was already the limit, so he would now see how she was going to defeat him. The younger one began to worry. However, the teacher asked her to calm down because even the oldest sister would not be able to win this test against the second student. And right now, confirming her words, she extinguished all 20 candles with one blow. Everyone who watched this said that it was simply amazing, and they extinguished 20 candles with one movement of the palm, worthy of going down in history. The younger one looked at her teacher and asked how this was possible, to which he replied that information technology was the specialty of her second older sister, and it seemed that she was simply extinguishing the candle with a wave of her hand, but in fact she had broken the forming contour inside the spiritual candle. After that, the girl took the key from the Supreme and knelt before her teacher, saying that she was asking for permission to lead the team and enter the tower of the fire demon. Our teacher agreed with this and the test began. Bai Qinlin looked up and saw that the elders outside the tower were watching the projections of the disciples inside the fable. And this was in line with the plot of the original game, and its original purpose was probably to show off the protagonist's achievements to everyone. However, it is a great pity that his iconic moments that rightfully belong to him are about to be taken away. Everyone went inside, and the second student was a little indignant because, despite the fact that she said everything sincerely, the teacher still allowed the younger one to take the initiative into her own hands. The youngest looked at her team and said that, judging by the structure of this stone chamber, they should be in the northern part of the first floor, and it seems that this is the farthest place from the heavenly staircase leading to the next floor, and the place where the strongest and most ferocious beasts live. Suddenly, the second student noticed a heavy aura, and said that it meant the rebirth of the evil beast. So the process on the first floor was about to begin. And then, she immediately ordered everyone to be as careful as possible. Looking at the younger one, she was surprised because the girl was still standing and doing nothing. The second student ordered her to pull herself together. However, the younger one ignored her words and said that she was surprised at how thick the aura of evil allergy was here. Meanwhile, thousands of monsters began to rise from the ground, with huge golems at their head. Seeing the crimson one, she was delighted because that was what she needed. The second sister began to worry about me. What can I say? The cultivation of these monsters is no less than hers. This means that it is impossible to fight them. To which her sister replied that the second student need not worry, because everything was fine, and the teacher had already prepared a unique spell for her. Laughing, the Crimson Demon asked, "Does the little girl really want to go into his arms?" To which she replied that if she didn't get as close to him as possible, she wouldn't be able to because it was her secret. The demon laughed and said that he was surprised that she was so brave, and in that case he would enjoy her delicious flesh and blood. When the girl got close enough, she raised her hands, and she whispered that they were the disciples of the demon Lord Qinlin. As soon as the demon heard this, he immediately fell to his knees in front of her and apologized for not recognizing the students. After a few more apologies, he said that he would now go back underground to sleep and ordered his assistants to escort these respected immortals to the next floor. After this, the team, riding on these puppets, headed forward. The second student looked at the younger one and asked what she told these demons, to which the girl replied that this was the result of her heavenly god protecting her. The Supreme One who was watching all this said that it just doesn't make sense because this demon is an evil demon that is suppressing the tower. He not only dealt blows but also helped them rise to the next stage, which is simply outrageous. The Supreme looked at the Demon Lord and said that their temple was definitely cheating, and he was proposing to strip this temple of their trial qualifications. Bai Qinlin smiled as he recalled that he had passed through the Fire Demon Tower twice and taught a lesson to any demon with any strength, and for them, it was a blessing. It was not cheating at all. Suddenly, Mrs. Wren came up to him, hugged him, and said that she was surprised that this old man was again putting folders in his wheels, running her hand over his cheek. She said that if Bai Qinlin agreed to cooperate, then one particular day her security could also provide him with even greater support. Bai Qinlin thought about it and decided that the woman was probably talking about something pornographic. He began to think that on that day he had already drawn a very clear line, and using the removal of the poison of passion, he thought that he had finished the line with her. However, as circumstances forced her into marriage and her husband was a eunuch, and she was tormented by the fortune-telling from the poison of desire without being able to free herself. But once she lost that poison, it was as if she hadn't changed at all, and when Bai Qinlin decided that perhaps this was just the nature of a woman, and she wouldn't calm down unless she got what she wanted as a woman. The hero smiled and said that her courage was worthy of respect. He ran his hand down her leg and told her what to do. This is in front of her husband and in front of the heads, forcing him to respond to her provocations. As soon as he touched her, her face contorted in pleasure in front of everyone else. The Supreme looked at the sect leader and pointed out that Bai Qinlin looked down on his condemnation, so he needed to be punished. The headmistress thought about it and decided that Bai Qinlin was probably doing this to pamper the second disciple, and she didn't want to lose his adoration for her. The girl replied that she thought that what the Supreme One said was too biased, and by using cunning for victory, this temple could better demonstrate the style of their demonic path. After that, she looked into his eyes and asked him if there was already such a need to conduct proper fair battles in order to win. After a few seconds of silence, she said that his thinking was more and more reminiscent of the thinking of a hypocrite who claims to be righteous. The Supreme Commander immediately apologized and said that this was not his intention. Hearing this, the girl blushed and thought that now Bai Qinlin must have felt her sincerity. The Supreme, meanwhile, thought that if the result that Xiao Chen got could not compensate for this shame, he would never forgive him for it. The Demon Lord's team had already ascended to the second floor. The second student explained that the name of this statue is the emotion-destroying wild foal, and it was created from the essence of the founder's animal, and its task is to test the demonic heart of the test participants and see if it is dulled by worldly desires. The woman explained that once they stepped on that stone platform, the test with the demon's heart would begin, and only one person could succeed for the entire team to pass. The head of the sect, looking at all this, said that what was expected from her sister, she is very good, especially the guilt about the test of the fire demon tower. Meanwhile, inside the woman was thinking about the fact that she knows that the water mirror on which the gaze is focused shows everything that happens in the tower. Is she really deliberately showing off in front of the Godfather? The Supreme, looking at all this, began to get angry because the Temple of the Demon Lord is probably the most apathetic in the entire sect, and this stage is essentially an absolute victory for them. However, the second student was hesitant because if she went on stage and took part in the test, the same child might reveal her destructive emotions towards Hongyi. Meanwhile, the younger student was thinking that perhaps the bronze statue would reveal the shameful thoughts she had about the teacher. They looked at each other, and each of them suggested that the other go to the stone platform. When they said this at the same time, there was an awkward silence in the air. Suddenly, one of the participants said that he could go first. The man explained that his master's wife had given him instructions that the Demon Lord's temple were friends and not enemies. The second student smiled and said that in that case they could watch the performance of Ni's younger brother. Immediately after that, he jumped onto the stone platform, and he announced that he wanted to pass this test. The bronze statue admired him with his gaze, and she announced that he had a pure heart, untouched by love, so he could pass. The others were surprised when they found out that despite being so handsome, he was still a virgin. Some thought that perhaps he was not interested in women, but they were immediately told that under rumors his master had castrated him. Ren became a little tense after hearing this. However, her husband apologized and said that he was afraid that this guy was interested in her, so he reluctantly castrated him. He added sadly that he did not expect that the one who would eventually seduce her would end up in the neighboring temple. However, his wife immediately said that when that person did all sorts of things to her, her husband still did nothing despite witnessing all of this. And she also added that if her husband used all of his strength, Bai Qinlin might not be able to suppress him without using a poisonous technique. After that, she grabbed his face and said that the whole thing is that her husband is a worthless labor, and he really likes to feel that others dominate his wife. As soon as she said this, he immediately blushed and began to say that it was not true and that she was talking nonsense, but his voice trembled, and he even got a little excited. Meanwhile, Ni bowed and thanked them for allowing him to do this. Xiao was surprised that these two temples had united and had already passed the tests. He looked at his team and asked who among them was ready to pass this test and bring benefit to their temple. However, all the participants began to think that perhaps their personal lives would be revealed, and since only one person from the team should do this, it would be better if they did not pass. After assessing all of their gazes, Bai Qinlin realized that they were all truly trash and cowards, and using the pure calm jade heart technique, he could pass this test. But unexpectedly, the second student announced that she wanted to pass this test. Because of this, the guy began to get nervous because he knew that the woman standing in front of him was cold as ice with everyone, and she would probably easily pass this test. The younger student immediately thought that her older sister had acted too rashly because the younger one already wanted to find an opportunity to use the ghost puppet to pass the test smoothly. The bronze statue admired the Demon Lord's second disciple and looked into her soul, seeing everything she has been through over the years, and also the latest exciting events. The second student thought that of course Hongyi is the only person who lives deep in her heart and she will be able to pass the tests. But suddenly her idea of this was destroyed, because at this exciting moment she began to think about her master, and from the things he did for her. The bronze statue declared that on the path of demonic cultivation, all emotions are sins, so it does not pass the test. All her fans immediately started saying that they couldn't handle the fact that she was in love with someone. Hongyi realized that when it came down to it, it was obvious that the person in question was not her, but Bai Qinlin, and in the end they were just close friends and not sisters. However, Bai Qinlin thought that no one understood character settings better than him, and this person was definitely Ye Hongyi, and it really could only be her, and the reason why she forced herself to perform in the Fire Demon Tower trial was definitely to help Hongyi gain favor. The younger student looked back at the same time and thought that the second older sister was the one who was deceived the most in the recent plan to kill the teacher and the person who did this to the second older sister. This is that same scoundrel Xiaochen. Thinking about this, she began to look at him as if the guy noticed this look and thought that she had such evil intentions that she would act as if she would kill him as soon as he got in her way.